Chapter 974. The more Yuqigong spoke, the more agitated he became. The anger that had been suppressed in his heart for more than 10 years completely exploded at this moment. He shook Zhang Feng's shoulders with all his might, tears streaming down his face. It was as if Zhang Feng, who was in his hands, was the murderer who had killed his brother. Seeing Yuqigong's crazed state, Zhang Feng was no longer anxious or worried. He could feel Yuqigong's heart-wrenching pain, despair, and coldness. He was a person who had seen the most despairing thing in his life, but now, he could easily obtain warmth. Under the surging emotions of loss and gain, he actually thought of his former brother. He thought of the tragic state of his brother who had been frozen into an ice sculpture in order to give the resources in his hands to the brother who needed him more and went to protect his home. So, emotions needed to be vented. When something was buried in one's heart for a long time, it would multiply. When it encountered a trigger point, this kind of grief and sorrow would be vented out like a geyser. Just as Zhang Feng was thinking about how to make old Yu let go, he heard a muffled sound. Yuqigong, who was strangling him, slowly fell to the ground. Behind him, the gloomy Chang Yaojin slowly withdrew his hand knife. It was obvious that this hand knife was made by him. Originally, Chang Yaojin was preparing to go to Chang'an City. After learning about Zhang Feng's situation, he wanted to go up the mountain to take a look, but he ended up seeing this scene. He also saw the crazed Yuqigong. He was afraid that he would hurt Zhang Feng, so he decisively knocked him out. At this time, Zhang Feng slowly collapsed on the recliner, gasping for breath. His two arms seemed to have no feeling, hanging limply on both sides, extremely numb and itchy. Chang Yaojin didn't care about the unconscious Yuqigong on the ground. He dragged him aside by his feet and tore open Zhang Feng's clothes. As soon as he tore open the clothes, Chang Yaojin and Yu Shernan couldn't help but gasp. They saw that both sides of Zhang Feng's neck were swollen, and the places where he had been strangled were bruised. Zhang Feng's arms were purplish-black. Obviously, there was a serious lack of blood. Zhang Feng struggled to wave his hands, but the pain made him grit his teeth. He could only smile bitterly and say, "I'm fine. It's just that my shoulders hurt a lot. I should be fine after resting for 2 days and applying my alcohol. This is a lack of blood. I just need to move around." Zhang Feng saw that Chang Yaojin was holding his shoulders and his eyes were filled with tears. He quickly continued to say, "It was my fault just now. Old Yu's mind was too agitated. He needs to recuperate. I don't dare to be careless. It's best to ask old Sun to prescribe him some medicine." Chang Yaojin glared at Zhang Feng and said, "You're too careless. If I didn't come in time, who knows what would have happened? You're in so much pain, and you still have the time to care about that old bastard? If you don't win this time, if you don't win the Mid-Autumn Poetry Meet, it'll be intolerable." Chang Yaojin was somewhat gratified by Zhang Feng's performance. If Lao Li knew about this, then the consequences. He turned his head and glared at Yu Shernan and said, "It's not like you don't know old Yu's temper. When he's angry, no one can drink from him. Just bear with it and watch. What if something happens to Feng Zi? As long as you shout, Lao Tzu doesn't believe that Iron Bull and the others won't be able to do anything to him." As he spoke, Chang Yaojin angrily rushed to the door. He glared at Cheng Chumo and the others and waved his hand. Then he pointed at Cheng Chumo and the others and scolded, "You guys are Feng Zi's brothers. Just now, something almost happened to Feng Zi in front of you. Don't you guys know? Have all the food you've eaten all these years gone to the dogs' stomachs? And you guys have been in the military for more than 10 years. Are you guys just waiting to die in the military? Can't you see that? Wait, all of you, go and receive your rewards. Everyone will follow the military rules and receive 20 military trophies. If there's a next time, don't blame Lao Tzu for not recognizing you." No one dared to say anything. Now that Zhang Feng was lying in the room, he couldn't see Chang Yaojin's appearance. Otherwise, he would have been shocked. At this time, Chang Yaojin had returned to the appearance of the ruthless Demon King in Chang'an. His entire body was filled with murderous intent. Zhang Feng endured the soreness in his body and hurriedly asked Yu Shernan to help him out of the room. As soon as he stepped out of the room, he bitterly smiled and said, "It was supposed to be a happy occasion, but I was deliberately mystifying it and caused a misunderstanding. I've implicated you all. When I'm better, I'll make a table of good things that you haven't eaten before. I'll make it up to you as an apology. How about that? Chapter 975. Shiwa ran to Sun Simiao's bamboo hut as soon as the incident happened. After a while, Sun Simiao, Ouyang Sun, and the others rushed over after hearing about Zhang Feng's incident. Cheng Chumo and the others put Zhang Feng on the bed in a flurry. However, Zhang Feng screamed the moment he touched the bed. Sun Simiao's face darkened as he glared at Cheng Yaojin and Yu Qigong, who was lying on the ground. Ouyang Sun, who disliked Zhang Feng the most, was furious when he heard that Zhang Feng was in trouble and that the culprit was Yu Qigong. He was so angry that he kicked Yu Qigong's butt a few times as soon as he entered the room. When Sun Simiao arrived, he chased everyone out, including Hai Huai and Yu Qigong. Only he and Zhang Feng were left in the wooden hut. Outside the wooden hut, everyone's face darkened. Cheng Yaojin clenched his fists and sighed in front of the wooden hut with his hands behind his back. He knew Yu Qigong's strength very well. That guy had always been holding a lamb in his hands. He could have crushed it with one hand. How much strength did he have? Could Zhang Feng's neck be stronger than that lamb's head? The meteor hammer was as light as a feather in his hands. What was the weight of other people's meteor hammers? More than 10 caddies were already impressive, but this guy's meteor hammer weighed a total of 40 caddies. With this kind of strength, how much strength could he possibly have when his mind was in turmoil just now? One could tell just by looking at Zhang Feng's neck and arms. If by any chance something really happened to this brat, it would be strange if the emperor and the retired emperor didn't kill everyone here based on their tempers. However, Yu Qigong couldn't be blamed completely. This old guy was also sad because of that incident. Yu Qigong was Niu Jinda. Li Jing and the others had been partners with him for many years. Everyone knew their tempers very well. Therefore, everyone chose not to touch on the matter of that year. Watching more than 700 of his brothers from the same village being frozen into ice sculptures right in front of his eyes with widened eyes and weapons in hand, no one would be able to bear it. This left a lingering shadow in the heart of this man who was made of iron forever. In the room, when Sun Simiao removed all of Zhang Feng's clothes, he couldn't help but be shocked. His face was so gloomy that it was about to drip water. Seeing this, Zhang Feng endured the pain and said, "Elder son, don't be angry. It's nothing." "That's nothing? You're already injured to this extent, and you still say that you're fine? How big is your heart? From now on, don't speak. Old man, I'm going to perform acupuncture. I'll open up the blood vessels in your arms first." As he spoke, Sun Simiao took out his box of silver needles that were comparable to barbecue sticks and was about to stab him. Zhang Feng was so scared that he hurriedly shouted, "Wait a moment. I'll show you something good. Wipe it on your body. This thing can be said to be a treasure. It can reduce inflammation, promote blood circulation, and disinfect miraculously." Sun Simiao didn't want to pay attention to Zhang Feng. He held the silver needle above the oil lamp and was about to stab Zhang Feng. This scared Zhang Feng so much that he dodged repeatedly. "Elder son, trust me this time. How can I mess around with my life? This is something I prepared long ago. This thing is called alcohol. It's a treasure extracted from white wine." Sun Simiao had studied white wine before. As long as this thing was lit with fire and used on people, it would indeed have the magical effect of promoting blood circulation and removing blood stasis. At this time, when he heard Zhang Feng say that there was something good, he frowned. "Why didn't you say so earlier? You should have taken it out a little earlier." Zhang Feng was afraid that elder son would copy old Yu, so he hurriedly struggled to sit up. Then he used his mouth to point at the shoebox he created and said, "It's inconvenient for me to move around. Elder son, please help me take it out. It's in the secret compartment under the shoebox." Although Sun Simiao was a little suspicious, Zhang Feng still couldn't bear to see Zhang Feng sucking in cold air in pain. Gritting his teeth, Sun Simiao poked his head down to look for it. Sure enough, the bottom of the shoebox was pulled out. Sure enough, there was a sound like a door bolt. Then Sun Simiao's hand lifted up vigorously. A secret compartment appeared under the shoebox. There was also a burst of wine fragrance inside. The secret compartment was about half the size of the bed, but there were about 7 or 8 jars of wine neatly placed inside. Sun Simiao glanced at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng smiled and said, "This is the last of my stock. There's really no more white wine. By the way, The jar with the word alcohol circled with red paint is alcohol. Don't take the wrong one. Sun Simiao didn't say anything. He picked up a few small wine jars that were only the size of a fist next to a big jar. He took 5 of them and put them into his arms. He took out another jar, first opened the mud seal and drank a mouthful. Then he slowly closed the secret compartment and asked, "How do I use this thing?" "Let's use the same method as the white wine trial. Pat it or rub it." Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Rub it first, and then pat it after the body is hot. The effect will be better. Do you have a smaller silver needle, such as a silver needle as thick as a strand of hair?" Sun Simiao took out the largest silver needle from the box full of silver needles. He looked at Zhang Feng and asked, "No, do you want to prick open the extravasated blood? Or just let him be in pain like this?" Chapter 976. Outside the small wooden hut. Ouyang Sun and the others had also heard the news and came over. When they saw Yu Shernan and the others, they gathered together and whispered, pointing at Yu Qigong from time to time. Yu Qigong was anxious, his right fist pounding back and forth in his left palm as he paced around Zhang Feng's door. At this moment, 1 or 2 screams and groans could be heard from inside the room, causing Yu Qigong and the others to be even more alarmed. If this had happened to someone else, they really wouldn't have cared. But this was Zhang Feng, and it was a huge mistake that he had made himself. At this moment, even Yu Qigong, a man of steel, felt his cheeks turn red. But when he thought of the thing that Zhang Feng had mentioned, Yu Qigong stiffened his neck and felt that it was right. Chang Yaojin looked at Yu Qigong, then at Ouyang Sun and the others, and then at Zhang Feng's tightly shut door. He couldn't help but sigh and pat Yu Qigong on the shoulder. He could understand Yu Qigong's current feelings. No one would be able to remain calm at this moment. If Zhang Feng's thing was created, what would it be like? It would allow the hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the army to never suffer from the cold again. It wasn't just Yu Qigong. Even he himself was boiling with excitement when he heard about this. At this moment, Zhang Feng's tightly shut door slowly opened, and Sun Simiao walked out with a medicine box. Seeing this, Yu Qigong hurriedly went up and asked, "Elder Sun, how is Fengzi?" Sun Simiao glared at Yu Qigong and Chang Yaojin, the warning in his eyes self-evident. Fengzi is fine. His shoulders are a little dislocated, and his meridians are blocked and shifted. Old man has already used acupuncture to release the clotted blood and reset his bones. As long as he recuperates, he will be fine. But listen carefully, if you dare to cause trouble again, I will definitely report Fengzi's matter as it is. Hearing Sun Simiao's words, Yu Qigong and the others breathed a sigh of relief. As long as there were no sequelae, this kid was only 20 years old. After a few days of recuperation and some nourishing ingredients, he would be able to jump around again. In the end, Yu Qigong still held back. Otherwise, would his shoulders be as hard as a sheep's head? Coupled with Zhang Feng's miraculous alcohol, Sun Simiao could only relieve the blood clot on his arm and then reposition it. At this moment, his mind was still filled with the word alcohol. Sun Simiao took a look at the fist-sized porcelain bottle of alcohol that he had gotten from Zhang Feng. He happily went to brew the medicine for Zhang Feng, and while he was at it, he also went to study the gunpowder potion. As soon as Sun Simiao left, Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin went straight to Zhang Feng's bedroom. Shiva, who was at the door, pretended not to see anything and went back to training with Chung Chumo and Scarface Jia Daoren. As soon as the 6 of them entered, they could smell the smell of alcohol in the air. They couldn't help but look at each other. There was still some left? What time was it now? Could it be that he was secretly drinking just now? Zhang Feng leaned against the pillow with difficulty. As if he could see the intentions of the 4, he hurriedly said, "This is alcohol. You've seen Idiot Way before. If you want to drink, I don't care. But please go down the mountain and drink. I still have half a jar here. It's enough for you to die." Yu Shernan and the others didn't understand what it was. After Chang Yaojin explained, they could only rub their noses and pretend they didn't hear anything. They pointed at Zhang Feng's arm. Yu Shernan asked, "The smell of alcohol on you, is it alcohol?" "Yes, old you and the others know. I haven't used this before, but this time, it's all thanks to this thing. Otherwise, this kid really wouldn't be able to escape this time." They couldn't help but criticize in their hearts. Was this thing really that magical? However, Zhang Feng didn't dare to elaborate. There was only a little left of this thing now. If he didn't save a little, he might run into another idiot one day and finish it for him. If he encountered such an emergency, he wouldn't even have a place to cry. Yu Qigong stared at Zhang Feng with red eyes and said, "Fengzi, are you sure you're okay?" Zhang Feng's face was pale as he grimaced. He raised his right hand with difficulty and instantly grimaced in pain. "Then you..." Before Zhang Feng could finish, Yu Qigong saw this and began to undress with a serious expression. He also took out the broom behind the door and threw it to Zhang Feng. "Fengzi, this time, I was reckless. You can scold or hit me if you want. But after that, can you take responsibility for this manufacturing workshop? I promise that I'll give you as much as you deserve. I don't want a single cent. However, you should know that many of our brothers in the army don't have enough food to eat or warm clothes to wear. Every winter, many people freeze to death. It's going to be winter soon. I told you, really don't want to see the tragic state of our brothers back then. In the end, they froze to death in that place in order to protect their home. In the end, even their corpses didn't come back. Although I'm a businessman now, but..." As he spoke, Yu Qigong had already taken off his clothes, leaving only his undershirt. Yu Shernan and the others were also touched. They looked at Zhang Feng without saying a word. Zhang Feng sighed and said, "When did I say I wanted to hit you? Even if you didn't say it, I would still sell these things. I promise you, I'll let you take full responsibility for this matter." Chapter 977. Yu Qigong was like a child as he walked away happily. Zhang Feng sighed indifferently. Ouyang Sun and Chu Suiliang opened their mouths, but in the end, they left Yu Shernan behind and left silently. Yu Shernan and Chang Yaojin carried Zhang Feng from the bed to the lounge chair at the door. Chang Yaojin wanted to say something a few times, but when the words reached his mouth, he couldn't say anything. Zhang Feng also saw the strange look on their faces. He smiled and said, "Mr. Bashi, old Chen, what kind of relationship do we have? If you have something to say, just say it. Old Yu is a straightforward person. Although the first time we met was a little unpleasant, I am not a person who holds grudges. Young man, please don't blame old Yu for this." Yu Shernan smacked his lips and said, "Are you wondering why we, the high and mighty scholars, have such a close relationship with businessmen like Lao Li and old Yu?" Zhang Feng didn't want to know that it was all fake. In this era, among the scholars, farmers and businessmen, merchants were the lowest position. They were reviled as porters, who bought low and sold high, and so on. But this was the market economy. If it weren't for their existence, how could taxes and the circulation of goods be promoted? However, these scholars were all high and mighty characters. Normally, these merchants would have to salute even if they saw a Confucian scholar, let alone these famous Confucian scholars. However, since the beginning of Chong'an University, the relationship between Lao Li and Yu Shernan, as well as Sun Simiao and the others, was as good as brothers. This made Zhang Feng curious. Zhang Feng nodded his head and said, "I hope that teacher can clear up my doubts. However, I am also very curious. Lao Yu is a frank and upright person. Even if I made such a big joke with him before, Lao Yu didn't complain at all. But today, when we talked about the textile factory, why did his temperament change so much? Also, why would a brother be frozen like that?" With his hands behind his back, Yu Shernan gazed at the dazzling sunlight in the east. Narrowing his eyes, he said, "You might not be aware of this, but I'll have to start from the previous Yangguang Army's expedition to Goguryeo. 300,000 soldiers were buried there. Do you think you can sit back and relax just because you're a commoner, a merchant, or a descendant of an aristocratic family? You're wrong. At the end of the Sui dynasty, there were 72 rebellious kings and 36 bandits who wreaked havoc in the world. How could there be a paradise in this world? At that time, old Yu and the others were hot-blooded youths who cared about their country and the world. But what happened in the end? Have you ever seen someone who was so hungry that they could only eat tree bark and roots to survive? Or have you ever seen people who eat rice and meat in order to survive? I've seen it." At this moment, Yu Shernan's entire body was trembling. His face was pale, as if he was recalling those tragic scenes. After a long while, he continued, "Originally, they were preparing to seek a living because of the disaster that befell their families. But when they saw these things on the way, They were all hot-blooded youths. Which one of them didn't want to quell the chaos and return peace to the world? But everyone has their own ambitions. From that time, we met in Chang'an City and prepared to work together for the sake of the world. Don't ask how we met. After so many years, what you can see is our present. But what about what you haven't seen? So don't blame old you. At that time, after he joined the army, he was full of mettle. When he returned to the village, he basically brought all the youths in the village with him. But it was also on that winter day that he was stationed in Liangzhou because of military orders. Those from his village were not so lucky and became part of the army. In the winter of the 13th year of the Day dynasty, more than 30 of his brothers and more than 100 of his village's descendants were attacked by the Sui dynasty soldiers and the Turks, who took advantage of the chaos to raid the south. In the end, they were forced to enter Mount Qilian. At this point, Chang Yaojin saw that Yu Shernan's voice was trembling, so he sighed and said, "That batch of military supplies was basically the first batch of military uniforms for the frontline soldiers to pass the winter. But how could 100 or 200 people resist 3,000 Turks? There were also Sui dynasty soldiers chasing after them. No one knew how they stopped those people. By the time we received the news, it was already the next day. When old Yu and I arrived, we saw that Mount Qilian was littered with corpses, all of them Turkic corpses. When we reached the summit, we saw that the ground was littered with Turkic corpses that had been tied to trees. Some of the soldiers had bitten a Turk's ear or a piece of flesh to death. Chang Yaojin's eyes were red. His fists were tightly clenched, and his already large eyes were so wide that they seemed like they would pop out of their sockets. Zhang Feng was silent. He stood up with difficulty and deeply bowed to the east. Yu Qigong lowered his head and crouched on the ground, his body twitching. No one knew what sorrowful memories he was going through. Chang Yaojin calmed himself down and said, "By the time we reached the mountain, there were only 7 people left of the 100-some people. And behind these 7 people were our supplies. And they were still tightly gripping their weapons, their eyes still fixed on the enemy at the foot of the mountain. But their movements were forever frozen. So, Feng Zi, this is a nightmare for everyone who experienced that battle. No one dares to lightly touch it, but today, alas." Chang Yaojin heavily sighed, but in the end, he said nothing. There was only silence. Chapter 978. In the end, Zhang Feng still fell asleep after drinking the medicine. When he woke up, it was already the next morning. It was very quiet today. He didn't hear the angry shouts of the students doing their morning exercises, nor did he hear the sounds of morning exercises. It was as if he was in a dream. Zhang Feng's arms didn't hurt as much anymore. They were just a little sore. Under the effects of the alcohol and Sun Simiao's medicine, Zhang Feng's arms slowly recovered. Other than the soreness in his muscles, everything was normal. When he opened the door and was about to call Shiva to prepare breakfast, he was shocked by the scene in front of him. It was still foggy outside the door, and it wasn't bright yet. Zhang Feng wondered what time it was. He looked to the side and saw that Yu Qigong was still sitting in the same place he had been sitting the day before. Yu Qigong seemed to have not slept the entire night. He was carrying a Mo Dao in his hand. When Zhang Feng opened the door, Yu Qigong was about to slash the tendons of his left arm. There were already 2 streaks of blood on his arm, which flowed down his arm. When Zhang Feng saw this, he was instantly shocked. He quickly gritted his teeth and held the blade tightly. With his ruthlessness, if the knife went down, he would be crippled even if he didn't die. People in the military were always straightforward and didn't go back on their words. No one could change their minds once they made up their minds. Ever since Yu Qigong woke up yesterday, he had been very upset. As a stubborn person, he had always felt guilty. He thought that if Chang Yaojin hadn't knocked him out, Zhang Feng might not have been alive. "Old Yu, if you treat me as your brother, then put down the knife. If you don't treat me, Zhang Feng, as your brother, then chop off my hand as well." Zhang Feng scolded him coldly. When Yu Qigong heard this, he instantly sighed hoarsely and said, "This is all my fault. If I hadn't gone crazy yesterday, how could you have ended up like this? You may have disturbed me, but in my heart, I can't forgive myself. If the mid-autumn hunt is delayed because of me, I won't be able to make up for it even if I die 10,000 times." Zhang Feng hurriedly interrupted him. At this time, Chang Yaojin, who had not slept the whole night and went to the depths of the Qinling Mountains to hunt a wild wolf, was carrying the wolf meat and happened to see this scene. He hastily stepped forward to dissuade him. "Old you, what are you doing? Feng Zi is not that kind of person. Why are you so stubborn?" At this moment, the sound of morning exercises could be heard in the distance. Yu Qigong finally realized that he had been a little petty when he heard those lively voices. His cracked lips parted, but in the end, he still let out a deep sigh. Ignoring his bloody arm, he tore off a piece of cloth from his clothes to bandage it. However, he was stopped by Zhang Feng. In the future, such a large wound would require at least a dozen stitches. Zhang Feng pulled Yu Qigong to the living room and disinfected him with alcohol. Then, he used a sterilized cotton cloth to bandage Yu Qigong's wound. Zhang Feng saw that the two of them were staring at the small porcelain bottle in his hand, and the cotton cloth that had been soaked in alcohol at high temperatures. He said, "This is the alcohol that I didn't want you to drink to your deaths. It's a good disinfectant. As for this gauze, forget it, let's not talk about it anymore. We'll talk about it again after the biology class." He knew that if he continued to talk about it, the two of them might come up to him and pull his arm and leg, instantly dismembering him. Yu Shernan and Sun Simiao were not here now. After doing all this, Zhang Feng bandaged his hand. After Zhang Feng bandaged it, Yu Qigong looked at the numb feeling on his arm and clicked his tongue in wonder. He waved his hand and said, "I saw that you didn't eat last night, and this old man got another wolf. Today, you have to taste my cooking as an apology. If you don't agree, then fine. I'll agree, I'll agree." Zhang Feng spread his hands and obediently followed the two of them. The two of them did not walk too far. They looked at Zhang Feng from afar. Then, the three of them went around the waterfall and came to the periphery of the farm. This was the place where they used to make beggar's chicken. However, now that the food factory was finished, this place was abandoned and used as fertilizer for the weeds. By the time the three of them arrived, Elder Gao had already built a small furnace made of mud by the stream. The fire inside was burning brightly. Seeing the three of them come, Elder Gao just glanced at them indifferently. Then, he pointed to the farm behind him and said, "You came at the right time. Yesterday, when I heard that Feng Zi's arm was injured, I sent someone to the foot of the mountain to find a wild lamb for Feng Zi. Since you are here, go inside and take out the wine table. Shall we eat here?" "That's great." Zhang Feng had been hungry for a long time. At this time when he heard that, how could he wait? The few of them quickly pressed Zhang Feng on a stone and sat next to the bonfire to wait. In less than a quarter of an hour, a roasted lamb was placed in front of Zhang Feng. Elder Gao did not care about his heartache and took out a jar of dusty white wine from the house. Zhang Feng, who had been drooling for a long time, was about to take the wine jar when Yu Qigong pressed him on the stone. "You are injured, so you can't drink. Come, come, come. Eat more meat to nourish yourself." As he spoke, he took out a dagger that was also studded with gems. He cut off the best piece of meat from the lamb's thigh and placed it in front of Zhang Feng. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to speak, he cut off a fist-sized lump from the meat and stuffed it into Zhang Feng's mouth. Cheng Yaojin, who was sitting side by side, saw this and kicked Yu Qigong out. "Are you King feeding him? Or are you trying to kill Feng Zi?" Chapter 979. Yu Qigong glared at Cheng Yaojin as he got up from the mud. The meat in his hand was already covered in mud and soot. He was so angry that he threw the meat in his hand at Cheng Yaojin. "Do you want Lao Tzu to feed you? If you want to eat, do it yourself." Cheng Yaojin wasn't afraid of him. He took the meat and deftly stabbed it with a dagger. Then, he placed it over the fire and shaved off the muddy parts. He ate with relish. Yu Qigong was so angry that his whole body trembled. Elder Gao hurriedly advised, All right. How old are you? Why are you still fighting over food? It's not like it was 10 years ago. Feng Zi is a cultured person, unlike a barbarian like you. You have to eat properly. No wonder Lao Li always scolded you at home. Look at you. How old are you? What are you still doing here?" Hearing that, Yu Qigong and Cheng Yaojin sat down angrily. Zhang Feng, on the other hand, had a very satisfying meal. He didn't know how Elder Gao had marinated the meat. There was even barbecue seasoning and a strong smell of pepper and cumin on the meat. Wild mutton had a strong gamey smell to begin with, But after being marinated like that, there was no gamey smell at all. There was even the smell of sandalwood. Coupled with the clear sky after the rain, Zhang Feng couldn't help but eat with great relish. He hadn't eaten properly during this period of time. It was rare for him to be so rough. However, Yu Qigong had to be put aside. That old man seemed to feel guilty. He kept stuffing meat into Zhang Feng's mouth. He would stuff whatever meat was good into Zhang Feng's mouth. Lamb tendon, lamb tendon, lamb tenderloin. Zhang Feng ate until he was about to cry. Most importantly, he wasn't allowed to drink. Smelling the delicious white wine and seeing the three people continuously gulping it down, Zhang Feng was envious. Finally, after Yu Qigong snatched a lamb leg from Cheng Yaojin, Zhang Feng didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He stopped Yu Qigong. "Old Yu, are you trying to choke me to death or stuff me to death? You lost your mind because of your past pain and unintentionally hurt this kid. But this kid isn't a baby, right? Putting aside your age, I reckon that you guys are all my uncles. But thanks for not abandoning me. We've become brothers. I originally planned to have a good chat with you early in the morning, but then I saw you like this. How can I endure this?" Hearing Zhang Feng's words, Yu Qigong put down the meat in his hand. He sat opposite Zhang Feng and chuckled. "Your words are enough. But of course, you can't accept Lao Tzu's apology. Lao Tzu has been through all sorts of situations in his life. What hasn't Lao Tzu seen in his life? Previously, in the military, there were countless people who died at the hands of Lao Tzu. Even if he was wrong, Lao Tzu used his fists to force him to be straight. At most, he'll pay with his life. Lao Tzu has lived enough in this life. That time at Mount Qilian, he's already indifferent to life and death." When Cheng Yaojin heard this, he and old Gao sighed. Nothing came out of their mouths. Yu Qigong paused, but his lowered eyes were instantly filled with anger. He clenched his fists tightly and said, "In my place, people can die of old age, of illness, of being burned to death, chopped to death, drowned to death, scolded and trampled to death. There are many ways to die, but there are only two ways that are not allowed. And that is to freeze to death and starve to death. These are the most despairing and painful ways to die in the world. Lao Tzu has been in this world for so many years. Even though I've left the military, I'm still considered a soldier. And I still hope that my children will enter the military in the future. Yes. I hope that no one will starve to death or freeze to death in the future. I hope that one day, the people of the Tang dynasty won't freeze to death or starve to death. I hope that they can have enough food and clothing. Even if you want Lao Tzu's life, you can have it." Lao Tzu doesn't have a single complaint. At this moment, Zhang Feng finally understood. "No wonder Tai Niu and the others are so strong. It's all because of you. But don't worry. Once my textile factory is implemented and the firearms are successfully developed, it'll be enough to protect the people of the Tang dynasty, even if we don't expand our territory." Seeing that the topic had returned to the textile factory, Cheng Yaojin said, "I heard that you're going to use the waterfall for your textile factory? How many people do you need?" Zhang Feng nodded. "Yes. After all, human labor is limited. Even if they don't sleep for a day and a night, they can only spin 30 feet of cloth a day. That's already the limit. But I have a way here." Yu Qigong and the other two heard this and asked in unison, "What way?" "Using the natural advantages of the waterfall, we can make 12 water wheels. Using the water wheel's linkage, we can drive 100 to 300 large looms to weave cloth at the same time. And we only need 3 to 5 people to watch over it. And using the water wheel's linkage, one large textile machine can spin 1 bolt of cloth a day. 300 looms." Zhang Feng's voice stopped abruptly. He stared at the three and asked, "How many bolts of cloth do you think we can spin?" Chapter 980. For the next 3 days, Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao once again moved back to the mountain. The main reason was that Zhang Feng was too unreliable. As soon as they left, Zhang Feng was almost strangled to death by old Yu. When the old village head and the old scholar found out, the two old men almost used a kitchen knife to skin old Yu Shang. But fortunately, Lao Li called old Yu to Luozhou in time to deliver a batch of cement. This prevented the old scholar and the old village head from getting what they wanted. However, they once again pushed the two women to Zhang Feng. They glorified it by saying that they had to protect the Zhang family's property. Otherwise, if everyone did this, then what would the old Zhang family have? When Zhang Feng's doll came out and asked Lao Tzu for some special skills, what would he, Zhang Feng, have at that time? The two women seemed to know about the matter between Zhang Feng and Yu Er. But the Tang dynasty was good. The atmosphere was simply loved and hated by Zhang Feng. If you said it was not good, then you could have 3 wives and 4 concubines. Moreover, they could get along very well. If you said it was good, then this custom of having 3 wives and 4 concubines made Zhang Feng feel sorry for the 2 women. Today, Zhang Feng woke up early in the morning. Moreover, he was neatly dressed in the clothes of a great scholar. Zhang Yuyao, who was being held by him, was also wearing a rare gorgeous dress. This was given to her by Zhang Sun Wu Go. As soon as she appeared, the group of wild beasts present screamed again and again. Zhang Sun Wu Go nodded calmly. As for Jing Shu, there was no need to talk about her. She was dressed in light yellow with some pink decorations. She looked as noble as an imperial concubine. Compared to Zhang Yuyao's gold-rimmed feather robe, she looked like a fairy who was untainted by dust. At this time, at the entrance of the mountain, Li Shimin, Zhang Sun Wu Go sat in the sedan and greeted Zhang Feng. It could be considered as sending him off. Wei Zhang and the others also greeted Zhang Feng one after another. When they reached the mountain entrance, Zhang Feng brought the 2 women out of the carriage. He cupped his hands to everyone and said, "Everyone, there is no need to send me off. This time, it's either success or death. I, Zhang Feng, don't believe that the football and basketball I made can't beat him." Then Zhang Feng waved his hand. Li Chengqian and the others, who were wearing strange clothes and wanted to go crazy, lowered their heads and faces, red, followed Zhang Feng hurriedly ran down the mountain. In these 3 days' time, Zhang Feng secretly went down the mountain once and found Cripple Wang. He instructed him to make the football uniform. Then, he let Niu Weili use official means to buy 15 sets of leather armor from the army. Overnight, he modified them into the red and white uniform that Zhang Feng wanted. The number 1 to 15 was painted in white paint on the chest. There was also a strange number on the back. However, above this number, there were 4 words that everyone could recognize. White Deer College. Every mid-autumn hunt was held in Lantian. This was a natural place for hunting. It was vast and sparsely populated. The scenery was beautiful. Although it had experienced the erosion of the locust plague, but in this 1 month's time, under the nourishment of the autumn rain, the horn of life was once again in full bloom. The group of people went out of the range of Shao Mountain and headed west. As long as they followed the official road by the Wei River, the next town that appeared would be Lantian. Along the way, because there was only 1 day's time, they met up with the people from the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Rights at the Wei River Bridge. After completing the registration, they leisurely walked towards Lantian. Along the way, they spent another 2 days. In these 2 days, they were basically students from the 2 major colleges, plus students from the 4 major colleges of Hongwen-Guan and Chong, and University. They also hunted together, cooked together, and so on. There was nothing wrong with other things. 2 days' time passed in a flash. 2 days later, Zhang Feng stood in the middle of an open field and looked around. Li Chengqian smiled and asked, "You're looking for Erpi Gully, right?" Zhang Feng asked in surprise, "Is it here?" Li Chengqian nodded. Hearing this, Zhang Feng hurriedly squatted on the ground and looked at the stones on the ground. "Almost took one? Come over and dig it up to see if there was a coal mine below." Seeing this, Li Chengqian hurriedly dissuaded him. "You'd better stop. As far as I know, this is Erpi Gully, but it doesn't mean that this place is full of coal mines, right? I've already sent someone to inform old Niu. Perhaps old Niu will come over at night. You should prepare first. We'll depend on you later." Zhang Feng still didn't understand what Li Chengqian meant. Beside a river in the open field between 2 mountains, rows of tables and chairs were already placed. The students participating in the mid-autumn hunt were all standing upright in their respective colleges' seats. White Deer College and Chong, and University stood in their respective seats. Without waiting for Zhang Feng to ask, a boy servant from the Ministry of Works glared at Zhang Feng with a sullen face and complained, "Seeing that this is your first time participating in the mid-autumn hunt, we'll let you off this time. Why aren't you going over quickly? We're waiting for you in the mid-autumn hunt." Chapter 981. Mid Mid-Autumn Hunt. To a certain extent, it was just a formality to let the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights know what the students had learned in the past year. The most important thing was to get the outstanding students of the college to meet the people from the two departments first. To put it bluntly, it was to let the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights record the top talents in their notebooks first and then report to the emperor. After the imperial examinations 3 years later, the emperor would personally check the papers of these people. The high scholars were basically selected from these people. However, this was not necessarily the case. This was because every year, there would be many people who were hidden away by the college for some reason. They would only be released during the imperial examinations to amaze the world. This was also Zhang Feng's plan. Now, there were so many people eyeing Chang'an University and White Deer College. If these people were released at this time, what would happen? The opening of the Mid-Autumn Hunt was similar to the sports events in the future. First, the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights would praise the emperor. Then, they would encourage all the students and so on. After that, the chancellors of the major colleges would go up to give a speech. Since the chancellors of White Deer College and Chang'an University were both Zhang Feng and this time, the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan were on the same side, things were easier to handle. Originally, it was the Imperial College's turn to give a speech. Zhang Feng was prepared to study what these people were talking about. After all, he did not understand these things. It would be a lie to say that he was not nervous. However, this time, the people from the Imperial College knew how to have fun. The two deans stood up at the same time. They smiled at Zhang Feng and said, "We have long heard that young Master Zhang is brimming with talent. Furthermore, there are countless amazing poems that have spread throughout the world. However, these are only one-sided. As everyone knows, as the dean of an academy and the chancellor, this is not only reflected in the Tao of Poetry, but also in the Book of Songs and Etiquette. Although you invited the 4 great Confucians up the mountain, we do not know what methods you used. But if you want us to believe you, it's still a little difficult." At the Hongwen Guan, a fat man wearing a white robe embroidered with a large character smiled and stroked his mustache. "Brother Sun, you're making things difficult for her. President Zhang is a newcomer. Oh right, she's a great Confucian scholar who was jointly recommended by the 4 great Confucian scholars. We have to be careful with what we say." Cheng Chumo and the others who were listening below were enraged. They almost wanted to beat them up, but they were still firmly held down by Li Chengqian. He knew that these 2 grandsons were going to be unlucky. Zhang Feng laughed coldly and patted Zhang Yuyao's and Jingshu's hands, who were trembling slightly. He got up and threw a punch at the 2 of them, as well as the 2 officials from the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Rights, who had been watching coldly from the side. This immediately made them frown slightly. If this was any other place, it wouldn't have mattered. But where was this place? This was the Mid-Autumn Hunt, and the people who came were all literati. This kind of etiquette was simply a kind of contempt for them. However, the more Zhang Feng acted like this, the more the 2 people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan smiled. It seemed that the more outstanding Zhang Feng's performance was, the better it would be. Zhang Feng glanced at the 2 people and couldn't help but laugh. When the 2 people saw this, they were even happier. "Prince Zhang, Lord Chancellor, please. Considering that you're the youngest great Confucian scholar in Chang'an and even the entire Tang dynasty, I'll give you the opportunity to be the first to give a speech in this Mid-Autumn Hunt." Zhang Feng asked with a smile, "May I ask who you are?" The Imperial College's chancellor sneered and said, "My surname is Sun, and my name is Yen Bo. I'm the chancellor of the Imperial College, grade 5. "Oh, Yen Bo, hello. Are you sure you'll let me speak this time?" Yen Bo was stunned. He didn't know what Zhang Feng meant, but he still nodded and said, "Let's begin. Let's not waste everyone's time. Since Brother Yen Bo has spoken, then this humble Zhang will speak a few words this time." Zhang Feng waved his hand and said, "I'm sure everyone knows about the Chang'an University and White Deer College, right? The reason why I set up the college was to let the people of the Tang dynasty escape from poverty. I believe that everyone has seen the incident caused by the locust plague. Let's not talk about what White Deer College did. These are all small matters. As long as it can benefit the people of the world, we'll do it. Let's not talk about what the college did for now. Let's talk about..." "Wait!" The guy surnamed Sun couldn't stand Zhang Feng anymore. He hurriedly interrupted Zhang Feng and said, "President Zhang, this is the Mid-Autumn Hunt. Let's talk about the mid-autumn hunt. Zhang Feng curled his lips and said again, "The reason why I set up the college was to let the people of the Tang dynasty be illiterate. What I want to say is that as long as you're not blind, you can see that in the Tang dynasty, from the opening of the waterway trade route, to the emergence of the salt-making technique, to the trade with Jinla, these are the foundations that made the Tang dynasty grow stronger day by day. Think about it, what does a strong country need? What it needs is more people who can read. Don't ask me why I want everyone to be literate. Look at how many barbarian merchants there are during this period. If all of us are the same as before, how can we continue to do business? What does being illiterate mean? It's a matter of a country's reputation. What does a strong country need first? Of course, it's national strength. How can a country's national strength be strong? This involves one of the most basic things of Tao, and that is culture. Culture is the soul of a country. If you want everyone to believe in you, it's not about how many troops you have or how strong your military power is, but how many literate people there are in your country. This is the face of a country. I've calculated it once before. The ratio of literate people to illiterate people in the Tang dynasty is 100:1. That is to say, only one person in 100 may be literate. But this literacy is only in the literal sense. Why is that? It's not that they don't want to, because everyone knows that reading is the best out of everything. But now, what do you see? At this time, the people in the field listened to Zhang Feng's words. They couldn't help but feel a little moved. Zhang Feng was right. When they came to study and learn how to read, wasn't it the same as what Zhang Feng said? Chapter 982. Zhang Feng spoke passionately, and the people standing below were even more mesmerized as they listened to him. Cheng Chimo, who was familiar with Zhang Feng's temper, suddenly understood. Why did Li Chengqian not let him speak before? It turned out that this group of people wanted to show off again. This was simply, when would Lao Tzu be like Feng Zi? That would be great. At this moment, the people from the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rights, and Ministry of Personnel were all stunned. What was wrong with what Zhang Feng said? Although it was not as cliché as what everyone said before, Zhang Feng's face was flushed red as he spoke. He was so excited that he was almost dancing with joy. As for the students present, they were all fired up by Zhang Feng's words. It was to the point that they were almost ready to jump into action the moment Zhang Feng said what he wanted to do. The people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan felt uncomfortable at this moment. Their faces were full of discomfort as if they had eaten feces. Their expressions were as uncomfortable as they could be. Zhang Yuyao, who was behind Zhang Feng, almost stood up to cheer Zhang Feng. Jingshu's eyes were also full of splendor. Our great Tang dynasty has heroes all over the world. If everyone had a tolerant heart, then our Tang dynasty would not be bullied by others. Since the era of Emperor Qin, look at our martyrs. Which one of them did not straighten their backs and work tirelessly for the rise of our Han people and culture? Emperor Qin unified the 6 states, forged a unified currency, and unified the written language. The Hanwu dynasty was famous around the world for the prestige of our Han people. There was once a classic famous sentence. Do you remember? Those who offend our Han people will be killed no matter how far away they are. What is this? This is the first time we, the Han people, straightened our backs and let everyone in the world see us, the yellow-skinned and black-haired descendants of the Yellow Emperor, stand up. But what about now? Turn around and take a look. Our emperor has created an unprecedented civil and martial arts system. He has also held an unprecedented imperial examination system. Of course, this imperial examination was not created by our emperor, but it was only implemented in our era. Our emperor has created an unprecedented way of spreading the word. This achievement is comparable to Qin Huang and Emperor Wu of Han. And look at the current cooperative and so on. What are these? These are all for our emperor to straighten our back of the Tang dynasty, deter the foreigners, and prevent our people from being bullied. Take a look at all of you. Some people are cutting their way through this path, but there are even more people who are looking at the sea and sighing. But I want to say that it's all pretentious. If you don't act, you won't die. Right now, His Majesty wants to improve, to surpass the Qin Emperor and Emperor Wu of Han. But in the vast country of the Great Tang, there are countless illiterates, and many people are starving. Last year, His Majesty signed the Wei River Treaty in humiliation, killing the white horse. Why? This is all for the sake of our Tang dynasty's people not to be bullied. What can we do about this? We have to shoulder this heavy burden and contribute to the rise of the great Tang. That's why some people say that my White Deer Academy is dancing on the brink of death. There are even some people who say that if I pay a little bit of my master's money and find a master, not only will I be able to learn a thing or two, I'll even be able to earn a little bit of money. There are also people who say that your academy is breaking the rules and that the academy needs to charge a high fee to show its status. However, in my opinion, all of this is bullshit. Whether a person is high or not depends on whether he works hard, studies hard, and achievements. Relying on the heavens, relying on the earth, relying on relationships, and relying on parents. What are those? Those are all cowards. In my opinion, such people don't deserve to learn the sage path of Confucius. They should just eat and wait for death. Learn what? Eat and wait for death. Isn't that good? The more Zhang Feng spoke, the more agitated he became. He even said all the things that he wanted to say. This time, Zhang Feng didn't just say it for the students present and the people from the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Officials, and the Ministry of Rights. He mainly said it for the large number of people outside and the students who were preparing to enter the college in advance to watch the Mid-Autumn Hunt. Every year, the Mid-Autumn Hunt was a show of the country's desire for talents and grace. It was also a time for the country to identify talents in advance. It was also a time for the major colleges to prepare to recruit talents. Because at this moment, all the men of the right age in the Tang dynasty and the surrounding areas would come wave after wave. Even a month ago, they came to watch the hunt. This was the time to show whether the college was strong or not. It was also the time to decide whether the college would be able to recruit top talents in the next 3 years. At this moment, after hearing Zhang Feng's speech, a loud voice shouted from the top of the mountain in the distance. Good. Well said. If one is to be President Zhang, one might as well go home and raise pigs. President Zhang, does White Deer College still want people? President Zhang said it so well. One more. One more. One more. One more. Chapter 983. At this moment, Li Chengqian and the others couldn't help but be stunned as they looked at the boiling scene. Although they already knew about Zhang Feng's abilities, how could they have imagined that Zhang Feng's words would cause such a stir? The people from the Imperial College, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Hongwen Guan were also stunned. They had never seen such an opening speech before. They were simply here to snatch people away. Some of them couldn't help but start to panic. However, at this moment, the official from the Ministry of Personnel scanned the sea of people and saw Li Chengqian and the others. Although Li Chengqian and the others were disguised, they often moved around the palace and knew a lot about the situation in the palace. They had naturally seen the current emperor and the crown prince. Although this person looked similar to the crown prince, Li Chengqian was the crown prince. No one could imitate his aura. Therefore, when the official from the Ministry of Personnel saw Li Chengqian, he couldn't help but stand there in a daze, as though he had been struck by lightning. Oh my God! Could this be the crown prince? He had long heard that the White Deer Institute was established by the crown prince, and this Zhang Feng was merely a dean under the crown prince. Could it be that this was all true? The official from the Ministry of Personnel couldn't be sure. He hurriedly pulled on a good friend from the Ministry of Works and asked, Lord He, do you think that person looks like someone from the palace? The official from the Ministry of Works frowned slightly and wanted to refute. However, when he looked in the direction his friend was looking, he also frowned slightly. He also saw Li Chengqian, who was dressed in white. Although he looked delicate and pretty, he couldn't tell anything about him. Due to their identities, Li Chengqian and the others were meticulously disguised every time they went out. Therefore, although everyone could tell something from his refined movements and expressions, if they didn't interact with Li Chengqian and the others often, even their childhood playmates wouldn't be able to recognize him, let alone outsiders. At this time, official He from the Ministry of Work stared at the official from the Ministry of Personnel in shock and said, I say, old Qian, are you blind from old age? Wasn't the crown prince always in the palace? Moreover, wasn't it said that he had been helping the emperor deal with some important political matters? How could he have the time to come here and fool around? Besides the laws of the Tang dynasty. Without waiting for him to finish, the official from the Ministry of Appointments, old Qian, waved his hand with a pale face and whispered into his ear, Have you not heard the rumors in the palace? What rumors? Master, he couldn't help but ask. That's right. I've heard people say that His Majesty and the dukes would often leave the palace in disguise. Moreover, White Deer College seems to have been set up by His Majesty and the others. Even retired Emperor is the honorary Vice Dean of White Deer College. When Lord He heard this, his frown deepened. As a rank 4 official of the Ministry of Works, he knew some things in great detail. However, when he heard his old friends say this, he couldn't help but frown. After thinking about it carefully, he heaved a deep sigh of relief. He patted the shoulder of the official from the Ministry of Personnel. Old Qian, I'm telling you the truth. You're too nervous. If these things were true, why didn't Lord Zhong's son tell us? No matter what, we're an urgent department. If these things were true, why didn't we receive any news? During this period of time, His Majesty and the Crown Prince have been terribly busy because of Chang'an's economy and the market at the foot of Shao Mountain. In addition, Zhenna's request for help has kept them busy. How could they have the time to leave the palace? Think about it carefully. Is Lord Zhong's son in the palace or the Ministry of Personnel every day? Have you heard about Lord Zhong's son leaving the palace? Moreover, you said that retired Emperor is the Vice Dean of White Deer College? Aren't you thinking too much? The relationship between His Majesty and retired Emperor has just improved. Why would retired Emperor come out to mess around? Lord He patted the shoulder of the official with the surname Qian and smiled confidently. Old Qian, you're really ignorant. This is what retired Emperor values the most. Do you think retired Emperor will break his own rules and do this kind of thing? Do you think His Majesty and Empress will allow him to do this? Hearing this, the official with the surname Qian from the Ministry of Personnel heaved a deep sigh of relief. Indeed, the rules established by the retired emperor stated that no member of the royal clan was allowed to use any form to side with anyone. Although the rumors about the White Deer Academy were getting more and more ridiculous, even if he was beaten to death, he wouldn't believe that the retired emperor would do such a thing. Hearing Lord He's words, Lord Qian's complexion turned slightly better. The gaze he used to look at Li Changqian and the others was no longer that respectful. Now that you've said it, it seems that I was really a bit too nervous. However, look at this brat's mouth. He really knows how to talk. Lord He glanced at Zhang Feng, who was talking incessantly and passionately, and nodded speechlessly. At this moment, Zhang Feng didn't notice, but Li Changqian and the others had already noticed the abnormalities of the officials. Chapter 984. Just as Li Changqian was pondering whether or not he should react, he saw the two of them whispering to each other before looking at him. They actually just ignored him. Li Changqian couldn't help but let out a deep sigh of relief. These two sly old foxes were the main participants of this mid-autumn hunt. Furthermore, he had met them a few times in the palace and had also met them a few times in the morning court. If their identities were to be exposed now, it would create a huge hole in his reputation. Fortunately, these two idiots were old and dim-sighted and didn't recognize him. However, this was also a warning to Li Changqian. If he wanted to hide his identity for a long time, it wouldn't be enough to disguise himself. He didn't understand why his imperial father wanted to bury those things. What would happen if he directly told Zhang Feng? Would that brat be scared to death? At this moment, Zhang Feng's speech came to an end. The administrators from the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rights, and Ministry of Personnel hurriedly walked forward and invited Zhang Feng down. They really didn't dare to let Zhang Feng continue speaking. They seriously suspected that this brat would continue speaking until the sky turned dark. The three officials waved their hands at the students, indicating for all of the students and the excited commoners to quiet down. Only then did they say, "What Principal Zhang said is extremely correct. It is just as Confucius once said, education is without discrimination." This is more or less the case. However, due to the time constraints right now, we will no longer pursue these matters, nor will we research these matters. If, without waiting for the official to finish speaking, he hurriedly waved his hand and shouted, "This matter isn't urgent. Once this mid-autumn hunt is over, Lontian County is very close to my White Deer College. At that time, I'll invite everyone to my White Deer College as guests. It just so happens that the braised meat, beggar's chicken, and beer were all invented by my White Deer College. At that time, I'll invite everyone to the mountain for a taste. How about it?" After Zhang Feng finished speaking, he added, "Everything will be free." Zhang Feng's words instantly caused a huge wave of cheers. At this moment, the officials from the three parties had already opened their mouths, but they didn't know what to say. You said to refuse, but how could you refuse now? At this time, it was no longer a question of whether they wanted to go or not. The key was that Zhang Feng directly took drastic measures to deal with them, directly blocking their way. The students had no choice but to go. The three of them could only cup their fists at Zhang Feng with a fake smile, indicating that they would talk about it after the autumn harvest. Then, they hurriedly announced the official start of the autumn harvest. Actually, the sales were very simple. The first step was to have the students of the various academies have an academic exchange. To put it bluntly, it was to build relationships and brag. A group of people gathered together. Whoever said the winner would be the winner. Regarding this, Zhang Feng was not afraid of him. Needless to say, Chang'an University was full of stubborn people recruited by Chen Tiniyu's people. Among the stubborn people who grew up in Chang'an City, who could be ranked first in terms of talking? As for Chen Tiniyu, the corners of Zhang Feng's mouth curled up slightly, and he mourned for all the students present for a second. Fortunately, this academic exchange lasted for 3 days. Zhang Feng had nothing to do, so he talked with the chancellor of the Hongwen Guan and the Imperial College for a while. However, basically, they were full of sarcasm and even wanted to get to the bottom of things. However, these people also knew that they couldn't win against Zhang Feng in terms of talking. In the end, they could only run away. After that, there was a 3-party meeting with the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Personnel, and the Ministry of Rights, which was a little difficult to handle. Fortunately, Zhang Feng had Jing Shu with him. Although Zhang Feng didn't understand these red tape, after watching Jing Shu's verbal battle with the heads of the 3 major departments, it really did bring a lot of help to Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel excited and couldn't wait to hug and kiss Jing Shu on the spot. This kind of trivial matter finally ended after 3 days. 3 days later, it was still the same place. All the students stood straight, but the students from A, B, C, and D colleges were basically communicating with their eyes. Some were envious. Some were fearful. Some were unconvinced. And even more fearful. Those with discerning eyes could roughly see that Chang'an University and White Deer College obviously had the upper hand. As for the Hongwen Guan and Imperial College, these places were serious teaching places, and all of them were gentle and refined. Who could compete with the big and burly Chang'an University and White Deer College, these weirdos? At this time, in the Hongwen Guan and Imperial College, there were some students with obvious bruises and scars on their faces. When they looked at Chen Tiniyu and the others, their bodies trembled from time to time. Obviously, they were taken care of by these stubborn people. On the other hand, Cheng Chimo and the others looked straight ahead, solemnly looking at Zhang Feng and the others in front of them, as if they were not aware of those gazes. This made the Hongwen Guan and the Dean of Imperial College gnash their teeth in anger. But there was nothing they could do. Zhang Feng had always been supportive. If words were not enough, then they had to rely on their fists. If your fists don't work, then your F*King useless. Get the F*CK out. Obviously, Chen Chimo and the others had learned Zhang Feng's true teachings, and they did not disappoint Zhang Feng. At this time, how could the leaders of the 3 major departments not see through this? But they could only sigh helplessly and announce, "Everyone!" It seems that everyone is quite satisfied with this year's autumn hunt. Since everyone has exchanged knowledge, let's move on to the second segment. Do you see the forest behind me? The 4 academies, A, B, C, and D, will all be separated into several small teams. Each team will have 5 people. Chapter 985. Every team must bring back 5 preys before sunset today. This will be considered as an important part of the autumn tree hunt this time. As for those who don't bring back 5 preys or didn't hunt any preys, 1 point will be deducted from them. And this time, the total number of students participating in the autumn hunt from each academy will be evaluated and ranked after the hunt is over. As for the academy with the lowest ranking, it will be directly eliminated. You all know what will happen 3 years later, so I won't say anything more. As for the remaining 3 academies, they will conduct the final round of Dao discussion among the students, and the most outstanding academies of this year will be determined. Similarly, the mid-autumn hunt will be judged based on points. The previous 3 days of academic exchange can also be used to familiarize each other. After 3 days of practice, the old man believes that all of you should be familiar with each other. Then, the old man announces the official start of the hunt. The most important part of the mid-autumn hunt had finally arrived. The number of participants for the mid-autumn hunt this time was originally planned to be 30 from each academy. Zhang Feng had originally brought 30 people from each academy. However, these damn fellows actually said that Zhang Feng's academy was just established this year and didn't have enough people. Therefore, each academy could only have 15 people. This meant that the total number of people from Chang'an University and White Deer College only added up to one academy's quota. This was also why Zhang Feng was more angry. After the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Appointments found out that these two academies were under Zhang Feng's name, they actually firmly believed that these two academies belonged to the same system. After all, the Chancellor and Dean of the academies were the same person. Zhang Feng didn't have any more anger. What else could he do? He could only pinch his nose and admit defeat. He originally thought that he could take advantage of this situation. However, from the looks of it now, it wasn't just taking advantage. Damn it, these bastards were definitely targeting him. Although he still occupied 2 spots of the academies at this time, which seemed to be a great bargain in the eyes of outsiders, but discerning people could see at a glance that other academies had 30 people in them. But what about his academy? Their purpose for doing so was evident at this moment, which was to prepare for the hunt. Hunting was also a test of a student's ability to survive and hunt in real life. It was a test of coordination between the hands, eyes, and brain. Furthermore, there were people from other academies monitoring them, so it would be difficult for them to cheat. The success or failure of the mid-autumn hunt was mainly determined by points. At this moment, White Deer College and Chang'an University were at a disadvantage in terms of numbers. There was a huge gap in points between them and their opponents. If they wanted to win, they could only rely on their own abilities. Zhang Feng did not doubt the abilities of these guys. Although they were stubborn, it was not easy to enter the circle of stubborn people in Chang'an City. These people were all second-generation heirs who had been abandoned by their families. They were proficient in eating, drinking, whoring, gambling, riding, and archery. This was also the reason why Zhang Feng had chosen them to come. As for White Deer College, although there were only 5 people including Tai Niu, there was still Hao Chujun, Ma Zhou, Lai Ji, and the others. To put it nicely, they were just going through the motions. In terms of knowledge, they were just going through the motions. As for relying on them to hunt and snatch the championship from these people, Zhang Feng could only think about it. Which one of those who could afford to study didn't come from a well-off family? What about Ma Zhou, Lai Ji, and the others? To put it bluntly, they were all from bumpkins. The fact that they didn't kneel when they saw them was already due to Zhang Feng's good education. In ancient times, people were very particular about hierarchy. However, their purpose for coming here was to build up their self-confidence. Most importantly, they were here to maintain their reputation. After all, if the entire college was filled with a bunch of uncouth people, Zhang Feng would not be able to maintain his reputation. What would others think of him? After all, Chang'an University was made up of stubborn students. When it came to keeping up appearances, Zhang Feng really didn't count on these people. Zhang Feng did not want to lose at this crucial moment. If he lost this competition, Zhang Feng would really lose everything. At this moment, the people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan School saw that Zhang Feng's expression was a little bad and could not help but secretly rejoice. They seemed to think that Zhang Feng must be feeling distressed because of this. Zhang Feng glanced at the two of them and did not say anything. At the command of Lord He from the Ministry of Works, a group of officials from the Ministry of Works carried a big box and appeared in front of the students of the 4 colleges. Inside the box was a dagger. The official from the Ministry of Appointments looked around with a solemn expression and said, "This hunt does not allow any injuries, deaths or disappearances, especially those caused by people. If I find out that anyone dares to use brute force or violence, I have the right to expel them immediately and hand them over to the authorities for investigation. In the next 10 years, they are not allowed to appear in any college of the Tang dynasty. Otherwise, they will bear the consequences." Chapter 986. After a series of warnings. Lord Qian of the Ministry of Appointments waved his hand impatiently and signaled the students to set off. Zhang Feng was too lazy to care about these things. Chen Tinyu and the others were enough. With the influence and prestige of the 4 great demon kings, who dared to mess around? They could scare these people to death. Was there a need to do anything? Since there was nothing to do, Zhang Feng took Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu to stroll around Erpi Ridge. These 3 days, he was bored to death. Humans were also strange creatures. When they were busy, they wanted to be free, but once they were free, they would feel anxious. Although these 3 days were spent listening to Jing Shu's songs all day and the days were very comfortable, Zhang Feng was always a little unhappy. Moreover, Zhang Feng had long wanted to go to Erpi Ditch to see what was going on with the coal mine and whether there was any progress. However, it did not seem to be the right time now. He simply took the 2 girls down the hill along the stream. While enjoying the beautiful scenery, he recited poems and couplets, which made the 2 girls laugh from time to time. Fengzi, Fengzi, here, come quickly, I'm old Niu. Just as Zhang Feng took out a silk thread from his silk clothes and was about to weave a set of fishing gear, listen to music, and fish to live the life of an immortal, Niu Jinda sneaked out from the bushes not far ahead, and on his head was a straw hat made of leaves. At this time, he stuck his head out and greeted Zhang Feng. If Zhang Feng did not look carefully, he would not have recognized that this was Niu Jinda. Niu Jinda's appearance was so ugly that it could make children cry at night. At this time, Jing Shu and the other girl were so scared that their faces turned pale and their beautiful faces turned pale. After Zhang Feng confirmed that this person was Niu Jinda, he kept the Mitsubishi army knife in his arms and comforted the 2 girls. He stared at Niu Jinda and said, "Old Niu, it's broad daylight. Can you not scare people by pretending to be a ghost?" Zhang Feng's face darkened. He finally managed to get Zhang Yuyao to stop crying. He glared at Niu Jinda and said, "I've been here for 3 days. Why haven't I heard from you? Are you here to scare me? You're asking for a beating." Niu Jinda chuckled and emerged from the grass. He looked around and patted the dirt off his body. "I wanted to come out earlier, but isn't this to avoid arousing suspicion? If someone else finds out about this, it will be difficult for you to deal with this matter. Furthermore, the noses of the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Personnel are all dogs. If they catch wind of this matter, do you think we will have anything left to drink?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng nodded. Niu Jinda was right. If these 2 bastards knew about the existence of the coal mine, they would not be able to get anything. Zhang Feng could not help but ask anxiously, "Did you find that thing?" "I found it. Let's find a quieter place and eat while we talk." Zhang Feng's head was full of question marks. What the F***ck are you talking about while eating? So, you've already prepared this beforehand, haven't you? With doubts, Zhang Feng held the 2 girls and followed Niu Jinda through the forest. After a while, they entered an open area. In the open area, there were 3 people who looked like servants. They were roasting a whole lamb over a charcoal fire. The whole lamb had been roasted like a pig. It was golden yellow and was still sizzling with oil. Zhang Feng's eyes widened at the sight. That's it? This was a beach protruding from the river. A thatched hut had been built in a hidden place in the beach. Zhang Feng could vaguely see some bedding and other things inside. It seemed that this was a sentry post of old Niu's men. Outside the sentry post, Zhang Feng could vaguely see 7 or 8 people holding sharp mo swords. They were on the trees or lying on the ground, staring at the surroundings like dead dogs. Niu Jinda pointed here as if showing off and said, "How is it? Ordinary people can't find this place, right? Come. I know you've suffered in the past 3 days. This is a wild goat caught in Erpi Ridge today. It's fat." As he spoke, Niu Jinda led the 3 of them to the roasted whole lamb that was being roasted. At this moment, the smell of the lamb mixed with cumin and pepper made Zhang Feng salivate. The premise was that old Niu had to take a bath first. Before they even entered, someone had already prepared a hastily made bamboo stool and a bamboo table by the side. After settling the 2 girls down, Zhang Feng looked at the roasted whole lamb. On the side of the roasted whole lamb, there were 3 roasted fishes that were being casually flipped. Zhang Feng was speechless. Zhang Feng was about to vomit after eating so much lamb. However, when he saw the fishes, his eyes started to shine. He pulled the 2 girls and went forward without saying anything. He searched for wild onions and fresh ginger by the river. After a while, Zhang Feng picked up a broken pottery jar that was still intact from the river and poured some chopped onions into it. He poured some ginger juice into a bowl and drizzled it on the roasted fish. In an instant, the smell of the roasted fish exploded. After that, Zhang Feng rummaged in his arms for a while and took out bottles and jars. He smeared them on the fish for a while. Then, he chased away the 3 people who were roasting the whole lamb and sighed. This lamb is a proper lamb. However, after being messed with by you guys, it's completely ruined. Our lives are tough. For the sake of my stomach, let me do it. Niu Jinda had been looking forward to it for a long time. He was waiting for Zhang Feng to say that. When Zhang Feng said that, Niu Jinda grinned and handed the dagger in his hand to Zhang Feng. Here's the dagger. You do it. Chapter 987. Zhang Feng didn't bother to pay attention to Niu Jinda. After all, this rare picnic made Zhang Feng miss his college life. Niu Jinda looked at the mutton while thinking. Niu Jinda's eyes were fixed. He kicked all the guards out to look for the wild onions and wild ginger that Zhang Feng had just found. Someone even sneaked into the mid-autumn hunt camp and stole a big pot. He twisted all these things into ginger juice and handed it to Zhang Feng. When half a pot of ginger juice was poured down, there was a burst of sizzling sound on the charcoal fire. The rank odor of the roasted whole lamb was covered by the thick ginger juice. In an instant, the tempting fragrance of the mutton overflowed again. Niu Jinda swallowed his saliva. Zhang Feng could only roll his eyes. In the end, even Zhang Yuyao and Jingshu stared at the golden roasted fish and roasted whole lamb and drooled. Zhang Feng had no choice but to put down the whole roasted lamb in his hand. He twisted a handful of onions and put them on the roasted fish. He roasted them on the fire and handed them to the 3 of them. However, there were only 3 fish. At this time, Niu Jinda looked at the roasted fish in the hands of Jingshu, Zhang Yuyao and Zhang Feng with a stuttering face. Zhang Yuyao was shy and handed the roasted fish in her hand to Niu Jinda with a red face. This Niu Jinda was simply transformed from an animal. After catching the fish, under the dumbfounded gazes of Zhang Feng and the others, he swallowed the fish in big mouthfuls. Zhang Feng was horrified to find that this guy didn't even chew. He just swallowed it directly. Seeing this, Zhang Feng felt a toothache. He was afraid that this old guy would be choked by the fish bones and couldn't breathe. But fortunately, Zhang Feng really underestimated Niu Jinda's appetite. After swallowing the roasted fish that was more than a caddy in his hand, Niu Jinda looked at the bottles and jars that Zhang Feng put on the ground. While Zhang Feng was eating the roasted fish, he poured the rest of the condiments onto the mutton, imitating Zhang Feng's actions. However, after doing so, Zhang Feng's bottles and jars were completely empty. A spicy smell and a strong smell of cumin filled the air, causing Zhang Feng to seriously doubt whether the whole roasted mutton that had turned from golden to black was poisonous or not. However, when Zhang Feng saw that Niu Jinda was actually sucking his fingers, and then secretly cutting his flesh with a blade to eat, Zhang Feng was so disgusted that he almost threw up last night's meal. Looking at the ground, what frightened Zhang Feng the most was that there was at least a caddy of salt in the gourd-shaped bottle that was as big as a fist, but this guy actually poured all of it. This old guy actually poured all of it on the roasted whole lamb. Wouldn't that kill people? After Zhang Feng and the other 2 pointed to their stomachs and said that they couldn't eat anymore, Niu Jinda happily held the roasted whole lamb and tore off a hind leg, chewing it in big mouthfuls. Seeing this, Zhang Yuyao's face turned pale. It wasn't until he finished eating the leg that Niu Jinda wiped his greasy mouth and said, "Boy, we really got lucky this time." Even though Zhang Feng was prepared, when he heard Niu Jinda's words at this time, he was really confused and asked, "What? What? You ask me what?" The Erpy ditch you mentioned is simply a great gift from the heavens to the Tang dynasty. When we first came here, we really didn't know where to find this thing, but fortunately, there was a burst of autumn rain before. After a long drought and a good rain, there was actually a landslide in this mountain. Guess what? As her body slid down, a black mass was instantly revealed. "That's coal," Niu Jinda said with exultation, and the beard on his mouth was dancing. "In the end, I sent someone to investigate the situation, and guess what? Good heavens, the whole mountain was filled with King coal. Brother, if we didn't get lucky, what is this?" Zhang Feng was also a little shocked, although he faintly felt that there was indeed coal reserves in Lantian. Moreover, it had already been mined since the Song dynasty. There was no way to trace back the specific time of mining. However, from the conversation between the few of them, he could be sure of one thing, and that was, in the beginning of the Tang dynasty, this era had not yet discovered a place to live, so it was really unclear whether there was coal in this mountain or not. However, Zhang Feng knew that this Lantian coal field was a super big coal mine that was said to not be emptied within 100 years. One had to know that this had been mined for more than 1,000 years before. Even so, it was not emptied. It could be imagined that this time, they really hit the jackpot. However, at this time, this had nothing to do with Zhang Feng. He hurriedly asked, "Tell me, why has there been no news during this time, and no news has been sent back to me? Did you encounter the Taiyuan Wang clan again and get into trouble?" When Niu Jinda heard this, the smile on his face disappeared. Even the lamb leg in his hand was no longer fragrant. He smacked his lips and nodded. "You're right, this time we are indeed being watched, but those people still don't know about this. This time, they seem to have brought some people from the direction of Taiyuan to prepare to come over. It seems that they also heard the rumors and want to thoroughly explore this place. But fortunately, I, old Niu, am smart. After discovering that there is coal here, I directly went to the Lantian County Magistrate and bought all of this second batch of coal. Therefore, at this time there is some entanglement between us and them. After all, there is something that we don't dare to spread." Otherwise, with Lao Tzu's character, he would have already pressed him to the ground and beaten him up. However, the more we obstruct them, the more they seem to be really angry, and they want to go in no matter what. Therefore, during this time, in order to not blow this matter up, I didn't dare to dig up the news and spread it out. Just 3 days ago, I heard that you guys came, so I took the time to prepare to spread the news. However, there is a problem here, and that is, the people from the Ministry of Works, Ministry of Appointments, and Ministry of Rights don't seem to be honest. I have a premonition that one of these three must be related to the Wang clan. Otherwise, why would the people from the Taiyuan Wang clan come here during the mid-autumn hunt? Moreover, they want to bring more than 500 people in to explore? Therefore, I feel that there is something fishy about this. Chapter 988. Hearing this, Zhang Feng's face turned gloomy. Judging from the recent series of events, Zhang Feng really didn't think that this matter was related to the 5 families and 7 factions. After all, Zhang Feng didn't want to offend these people at this time. However, if the Taiyuan Wang clan was involved, then the matter would become complicated and confusing. If you said that the Guanlong group was targeting Zhang Feng, then Zhang Feng could still explain it. However, this Taiyuan Wang clan, damn it. Lao Tzu didn't even provoke you. What are you trying to do? Are you trying to muddy the waters? But how are you going to muddy the waters? What benefits are there? After all, no one knew about the things in the mountains. It was just a rumor. If Lao Tzu hadn't transmigrated, Lao Tzu wouldn't have known that there was such a thing in this poor village. It seemed that these people were really here for the mid-autumn hunt. In the end, Zhang Feng could only link the final outcome of this matter to the mid-autumn hunt. If Zhang Feng failed in the mid-autumn hunt, then they had 100 reasons to kill Zhang Feng here. In order to be safe, they had to make preparations in advance. On one hand, they had to try their best to delay Zhang Feng's victory. On the other hand, they had to make use of their convenience in the palace to reduce the number of people that Zhang Feng could bring to the lowest level. Thinking of this, Zhang Feng couldn't help but smile coldly. Do you think that you are the only ones who are prepared? Do you believe that Lao Tzu and the others will give you a big gift? When he had asked Old Cow to come over, Zhang Feng had a faint premonition. That was because the mid-autumn hunt was basically held in Nantian County every year. Although the location was different, the general location was within Lantian County. Furthermore, after knowing that there was a coal mine in Lantian County and that there were people from the Wang clan operating there, Zhang Feng combined the Imperial College, Ministry of Works, Ministry of Rights and Ministry of Works to trip him up from time to time. Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of something else. Sure enough, Old Ox's words allowed Zhang Feng to connect the dots. Zhang Feng quickly asked, "Old Ox, how many people did you bring this time?" Old Ox's words made Zhang Feng think of something else. Niu Jinda shook his head and said, "Not many, probably less than 200 people. But you can rest assured that these 200 people are all experts." This time, Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel relieved. However, a murderous intent flashed across his eyes. He hooked his finger and whispered into Nyo Jinda's ear, "If you can get some people out, you can immediately bring this matter back to the Academy's smelting workshop. They should be able to rush out a few hundred Mitsubishi military knives within 3 days. Get your people to bring these things over and be prepared to fight with these people at any time." Now that she heard this, she was shocked. "Fengzi, are you going to completely fall out with those aristocratic families at this time?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. "I'm not stupid. Why would I provoke them at this time? But I heard from Niu Weili, who is also the Chang'an County Magistrate, that he was the County Magistrate of Lantian County for a few years. He said that there are many groups of bandits in Lantian County. As Lantian County hadn't been affected before, he didn't send troops to seize them. But you said that if during the mid-autumn hunt or when these people want to take action..." Before Zhang Feng finished speaking, Nyo Jinda's eyes instantly lit up. "Good plan. This is simply a good plan. I understand. I'll do it now. As for the other things, I don't know, so I'll leave them to you. As long as you say something, I've already sent my right-hand man to ambush you. As for the rest of the things, not to mention more than 500 people, even if they send 10,000 people, old Neo, will not take them seriously." Zhang Feng smiled and shook his head. But he didn't say anything. And these people, Zhang Feng was just preparing a backup plan. After all, this coal mine was related to Chang'an. This time, if the coal mine was exposed, these people in old Neo's hands would be the most powerful backing to guard this coal mine. As for these people wanting to take action, Zhang Feng really wanted to see what these people wanted to do. This is one of the things. There's one more thing. Help me pass a message to Mr. Bo Shi. Tell him to prepare for the mid-autumn hunt invitation. Tell them to speed up their training. At most 10 days, at least 5 days, we will definitely return to the academy." Although Nyo Jinda didn't know what the Mitsubishi bayonet and what he meant by preparation, he still followed Zhang Feng's instructions. He waved to a person beside him and then nodded. In an instant, that person slowly dived into the river and quietly disappeared in front of everyone, leaving no trace. At this time, Nyo Jinda asked, "Fengzi, let me ask you something. You have to tell me honestly. What's the relationship between us? If you have something to say, just say it." Zhang Feng gritted his teeth with a thin bamboo stick while looking at Nyo Jinda. But at this time, Nyo Jinda was looking at Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao. His meaning couldn't be more obvious. Zhang Feng smiled faintly and said, "Just say it. We're a family. There's nothing to hide." Although Zhang Feng's words were very normal and natural, listening to the two girls' ears, there was another layer of meaning. Nyo Jinda couldn't help but stare at the two girls with his eyes wide open. The way he stared at the two girls changed. It seemed that he wanted to see something different from the two girls. Could it be that this guy suddenly changed his personality and took these two girls? Chapter 989. At this time, Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu's faces were red from embarrassment. Jing Shu was wearing a veil, so nothing could be seen. However, from the way she gripped Zhang Feng's hand, it could be seen that her heart wasn't calm. As for Zhang Yuyao, who didn't know how to hide her thoughts, it was needless to say. Her beautiful eyes were twinkling like little stars. Nyo Jinda looked at Zhang Feng with a smile that wasn't a smile. He coughed and asked, "What exactly is this Mitsubishi bayonet you were talking about? How come I've never heard of it before? Can you tell me in detail what this thing is used for? Don't tell me this thing is the invincible spear you were talking about?" Hearing this, Zhang Feng instantly felt a headache. How should he describe this thing? It would be endless to talk about it, but since he had nothing to do now, Zhang Feng could only tell Nyo Jinda the whole story of the Mitsubishi bayonet. After touching his chest, Zhang Feng finally took out the thing from his chest. In Zhang Feng's chest was an exquisitely made Mitsubishi bayonet. Not only was it equipped with a handle, but Zhang Feng also used his own knowledge and ergonomics to add some other things into it. Therefore, not only could it be fitted perfectly with a firearm, it could also become a perfect weapon when held in the hand. The 3 blood-draining troughs had already been painted with bright red paint. Coupled with the crisscrossing striped grooves and the cold glinting 3-sided edge, Nyo Jinda stared at the Mitsubishi bayonet and felt a chill down his spine. Although Zhang Feng didn't want the two girls to see this thing, he didn't think too much about it. However, at this time, Niu Jinda was staring at the thing in Zhang Feng's hand. Feng Zi, this is the Mitsubishi bayonet? This thing doesn't look like a sword, nor a dagger, nor a saber. Is this thing really useful? After a moment of excitement and anticipation, Niu Jinda couldn't help but feel a little discouraged. Seeing this, Zhang Feng was not angry. Instead, he looked at Niu Jinda with a mocking expression and threw the Mitsubishi knife in his hand to him. Do you see that tree? Go and try it. Niu Jinda was speechless and a little disappointed. He tossed the military knife in his hand. This thing was not as sharp as his axe. It was as light as a firewood stick in his hand. He seriously doubted the use of this thing. However, Zhang Feng had already said so, and even revealed a sly smile. Niu Jin could not help but be alarmed. Once this brat revealed such a despicable expression, something big was bound to happen. He still followed Zhang Feng's instructions. He waved the Mitsubishi knife in his hand and casually stabbed at the pine tree that was as thick as a wash basin. But this time, it didn't matter. The next moment, Niu Jinda was instantly stunned. Although it was said to be a casual stab, he still used a little bit of strength. After all, this thing had a sharp edge, so no matter what, it would still leave a mark on the tree. But what he never expected was that his ordinary stab actually caused the 5-inch-long Mitsubishi military knife to sink more than half into the tree trunk. At this moment, Niu Jinda's eyes couldn't help but fiercely shrink. Even the hair on his body stood up. He asked in astonishment, Fengzi you, tell me honestly. This plaything, is this plaything the one you mentioned before, the one that can break through anything? Before he finished, Zhang Feng hurriedly made a shushing gesture and said with a smile, It is the thing I said. Hiss. Well, Niu Jinda heard this and couldn't help but take a deep breath. He didn't believe it and pulled the Mitsubishi knife out of the trunk. Then, he used all his strength to stab at the trunk. But the next moment, an even more terrifying scene appeared. At this time, under his full concentration, he only felt that it was as easy as piercing through the body of a lamb. This Mitsubishi knife would definitely sink into the trunk. Niu Jinda's eyelids couldn't help but twitch. He hurriedly pulled Zhang Feng to the side and pointed at the Mitsubishi knife. He asked, Brat, tell me honestly. Tell me what this thing can do. Don't be so wishy-washy, okay? Believe it or not, Lao Tzu will beat you up if you annoy him. Zhang Feng crossed his arms in front of his chest and said with incomparable arrogance, You want to know? But when he saw Niu Jinda's murderous eyes, Zhang Feng shrunk his neck and said, Actually, this thing's function is not only that. Did you see the 3 red grooves on it? In fact, that thing is used for bleeding. If it pierces an animal or a human body, then these 3 grooves and the 3 blades will continuously cause the person to bleed, making the wound unable to heal. And you see the crisscrossing holes on the Mitsubishi knife. These will completely destroy the muscle tissue of the injured area. Therefore, under normal circumstances, this thing must not be left outside. Once this thing falls into the hands of the enemy, you can imagine the consequences. Previously, when we were in the smelter, old Chen had already tested it. He got a set of Mingguang armor from who knows where, that set of Mingguang armor that was worn by generals in the army. Guess what the result was? With my strength, I can easily pierce through the hardest part of the breastplate. If I stab him 3 times in one breath, do you think? Zhang Feng did not finish his words, but the rest of the words did not need to be said. Niu Jinda held the Mitsubishi knife tightly in his hand, but Niu Jinda mercilessly snatched it from his hand. You want it? Who the hell doesn't want it? Niu Jinda asked back. Zhang Feng did not hesitate to put the thing into his arms. He held his head indifferently and turned around to lead the 2 women slowly out of the forest. He said, If you want it, send your confidant to quickly get this thing. If you are late, I can't guarantee that Lao Li or Old Chen will send the first batch to Chotzi. Hearing this, how could Niu Jinda sit still? He hurriedly picked up a handful of stones from the ground and threw them in different directions. He shouted in a low voice, What are you bastards waiting for? Hurry up and get this thing for Lao Tzu. If you are late, when you come back, Lao Tzu's legs will be removed. When they saw that Zhang Feng was really targeted on the mountain, the old men who were over 50 years old slammed the table and threw the chairs in anger. When they saw how Zhang Feng had actually cleverly used the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan to set up a trap, not to mention how he had cleverly ruined the scheme. He had even unrestrainedly promoted the teaching philosophy of White Deer College, causing everyone on the mountain to be fired up. The old men couldn't help but laugh heartily. Ha ha ha, old man knew that this grandson had the most wicked ideas. Who would have thought that these two sly old foxes would actually fall into the hands of that kid Zhang Feng? Awesome. How delightful. Isn't that so? I've already said that this kid doesn't like to be taken advantage of. If it weren't for the fact that we're already so old, do you think we would have been able to survive until now? Chu Suelyong glanced at Ouyang Soon and said, "Usually, aren't you the one who hates to see this kid the most?" Ouyang Soon stroked his beard and said without blushing or panting, "Old man, this is called beating people up. The more you like a talent, the harder you should beat him up. Jade won't become anything if it's not cut and polished." Ha ha. Fine, fine, fine. What you said makes sense. But what we should be concerned about now is how to make these people suffer again when they reach the mountain, right? Yu Shernan's voice fell. The old men's eyes flashed involuntarily. They gathered together like children and began to discuss with each other. Ouyang Soon took the lead and said, "Old man thinks that at this time, the football on the mountain is still not good enough. But think about it, this basketball is still very promising. That kid said this before. Coupled with the morning exercise, the old man thinks that this will be an unforgettable scene for these people." No. Yu Shernan knocked on the table and pointed to the letter and said, "Look, this kid has made such a big deal this time. If we follow the previous plan, it's very likely that we will lose face. Why don't we play a big game?" Ouyang Soon looked at Yu Shernan with some worry. He suspected that this old man had brainwashed Zhang Feng. He asked, "Tell me about it. As long as we don't go overboard, we can still talk about it." Yu Shernan smiled and looked around. He said, "Actually, we are a little too conservative. After going up the mountain, look at this place. Is there anything that we have seen before? Or is there something familiar? So we should learn from that kid. Since these people want to make things difficult for us now, right? Then why don't we be more high profile?" Chapter 991. After all, Niu Jinda's men were not qualified to enter the Imperial Palace. Compared to entering Shao Mountain, it was much easier. At this time, Niu Jinda's men finally waited for Zhang Sun Wuji at the entrance of the Imperial Palace with great difficulty. At this time, it was already 4:45 in the afternoon. Zhang Sun Wuji naturally knew Niu Jinda's men. As soon as they met, Zhang Sun Wuji waved his hand and turned back, leading the man into the Imperial Palace in a hurry. As soon as they entered the Imperial Palace, Zhang Sun Wuji took the opportunity to ask while waiting on the Vermilion Bird Bridge, "Are you here with news of the mid-autumn hunt?" When the guard heard this, he hurriedly said, "Replying to Minister Zhao, this time I'm here with two pieces of news. One is about the Wang clan and the coal mine. The other is about the mid-autumn hunt." Hearing this, Zhang Sun Wuji could also understand the importance of this and did not say anything more. He knew that this was not a good place to talk. He just wanted to prepare in advance. He had a hunch that Niu Jinda's men would come. It seemed to be related to the coal mine. However, he did not expect that it was related to the Wang clan's men. This made things difficult. As for Zhang Feng, the people in the Imperial Palace were not worried about that kid at all. As long as his brother did not harm others, they would be grateful. Hoping that others would harm him? It depended on who that person was. Just the people from the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan alone. If it was not that Zhang Sun Wuji looked down on them, they were not even qualified to carry Zhang Feng's shoes. This was the truth. Zhang Sun Wuji did not favor anyone. The two of them waited for almost an hour again. The commander of the Jinwu guards rode a big horse and personally came to escort the two of them into Taiji Palace. In the Imperial study, Li Shimin and Li Yuan also seemed to be discussing something. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Let's talk first. How did the Erpi Gully coal mine get involved with the Wang family? I remember hearing that the Wang family hasn't been to Erpi Gully for a long time. Is it because there's a member of the Wang family among you?" Li Shimin looked at Li Shimin and said. The guard was so scared that his whole body trembled. This was the first time he had seen the emperor at such a close distance. Although it was enough for him to brag about it for the rest of his life, the might of the emperor still made him somewhat afraid to breathe. Your Majesty, this is what happened this time. We were ordered to go to Irpi Ridge. As soon as we arrived, General Nyo had already sent people to buy the entire Irpi Valley, including a large piece of land in Irpi Ridge. He also announced to the public that General Nyo was going to build a residence there and retire there. Li Shimin frowned slightly. If that's the case, shouldn't it have attracted the Wang clan's people? Or should I say, the coal mine here has already alarmed the Wang clan? Li Shimin's heart could not help but sink slightly. Could it be that the Lantian county government, which was the closest to Chang'an, was also the Wang clan's people? Just as Li Shimin was about to let Xiao Gizi investigate this Lantian county government, the guard said again, Your Majesty, this matter may also be related to Prince Zhang. When the guard said this, Li Shimin and Li Yuan looked at each other and asked almost at the same time, Speak quickly. Zhang Feng's matter was quite complicated. This time, someone was obviously targeting him. As for changing the target, Li Shimin and Li Yuan, as well as the Guogong, were still having headaches. No one knew who was targeting Zhang Feng. At this time, hearing the guard's words, who were Li Shimin and Li Yuan? They thought of something in an instant. The guard hurriedly said, Your Majesty, a few days ago, on the second day after General Nyo took down Irpi Ling, the Wang clan's people came up the mountain. General Nyo also thought that these people came because of the coal mine, but today, after a secret meeting with Prince Zhang at the foot of the mountain, he learned that all of this seemed to be related to Prince Zhang's mid-autumn hunt. Hearing this, Li Shimin and Li Yuan could not help but be shocked. Was this mid-autumn hunt so difficult? The duo's countenances suddenly turned grim. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, Are you sure what you said is true? It's true. I heard it with my own ears. Hearing this, Li Shimin's face suddenly changed. Come in. Little Gizi, who was guarding outside the door, hurriedly entered the imperial study. Li Shimin said with a gloomy face, Pass down my order. Immediately investigate all the properties of the Taiyuan Wang clan in Chang'an City. Knock on those who should be knocked on, and spread the news that the retired emperor is a guest on the mountain. If anyone doesn't know what's good for them, feel free to come. Little Gizi and the guard kneeling on the ground were instantly shocked. Was the emperor preparing to attack the Taiyuan Wang clan? Was the emperor really ready to go to war with those aristocratic families? Little Gizi did not dare to be careless. He hurriedly went to the Ministry of Internal Servants to draft a secret edict. At this time, Li Shimin said, Did Zhang Feng say what to do about this? Prince Zhang said to let me and others go to the smelting workshop of White Deer College to get 100 Mitsubishi bayonets. At this time, they should have gone up the mountain. Chapter 992. After sending the person away, Li Shimin paced back and forth in the imperial study for a long time before saying, Father, what do you think Fengzi means by doing this? Li Yuan smiled as he smoked his cigarette. He said faintly, You've been with that kid for such a long time. Can't you see that this kid is someone who can be persuaded by reason but not cowed by force? This time, he might really be angry. These people have touched his bottom line. If it were you and me, what do you think would happen? Li Yuan said so. Li Shimin was silent. In his eyes, Zhang Feng had always been a lazy and carefree person who had nothing to do. He had always been careless about many things. This was also one of the reasons why Zhang Feng could attract people. However, this kid was extremely sinister. Once someone offended him, or someone he didn't like, they would be in big trouble. Just like what was written in a handwritten letter from Niu Jinda on Li Shimin's desk. This kid turned the mid-autumn hunt into his storytelling in a tea house. Not only did he not let these two people laugh at him, but he also made White Deer College famous. What was this? This was simply a godlike operation. Everyone has been misled by this kid's appearance. Although this kid is not a good person, he is not a bad person either. He just wants to live the life he wants to live. However, these people are always thinking of ways to annoy him and mess with him. You think, even a rabbit will bite when it's anxious. What do you think this kid will do when he's anxious? Li Shimin couldn't help but be at a loss for words. From the current situation, this kid was really angry. From the fairy cream incident to using the mid-autumn hunt and the environment of Irpi Ridge, he wanted to kill Zhang Feng there. These people's intentions were simply terrible. Li Shimin gave several orders in succession. All the orders were directed at the three core departments of the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, and the Imperial College and Hongwen-Guan. Li Shimin had long wanted to move these departments. However, he had never had the opportunity, time, and capital to contend with these aristocratic families. But now, due to the emergence of the cooperative and the opening of the waterway trade, as well as the Mitsubishi bayonet and the gun that Zhang Feng made at this time, Li Shimin wanted to completely concentrate all the power in his hands, as Zhang Feng said. And now, Zhang Feng was preparing to do this at this time, which also gave Li Shimin an opportunity. Erlang, you have to think clearly. Once you fight with the 5 surnames and 7 Wang and the Guanlong aristocratic family, it will inevitably cause the people in Shandong will react. Are you sure you can deal with it? With the current situation in the Tang dynasty? Li Shimin couldn't help but hesitate. Li Yuan was right. These aristocratic families were basically of the same breadth and branch. If there was only one person in the East, it could almost be said to be fighting against these aristocratic families at the same time. If these aristocratic families took any action, it would be a big earthquake for the Tang dynasty. In addition, the Tang dynasty's periphery was unstable at this time. If such a thing happened at this time, what would happen? Li Shimin couldn't help but be silent. At this time, seeing Li Shimin like this, Li Yuan sighed and said, "In fact, all this is not your fault. This is the cancer deposited by the previous dynasty. I think if you want to do it, you should start with the imperial court. After all, the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, and the Ministry of Works are the important core of the Tang dynasty. These people hid a little deeply before, so we couldn't do anything. But now that these people have jumped out, we have a reason to get rid of these arrogant guys." In fact, Li Yuan was very clear about the reason why the Sui dynasty fell and why the Tang dynasty could rise so quickly. It was that night in Taiyuan when he had a talk with the Guanlong 8 great families, as well as the people of the 5 surnames and 7 clans, which made the Li family of Longxi recognize his identity, and thus laid the foundation for the Li Tang dynasty. However, to get rid of the restraint of these aristocratic families, Li Yuan had been working hard all the time. However, after the last incident, Li Yuan gradually distanced himself from the imperial court. But at this time, he really saw hope. The reason why he reconciled with Li Shimin was that he saw in Zhang Feng the shadow of getting rid of these aristocratic families and making the Tang dynasty truly glorious. Therefore, at this time, Li Yuan's heart, which had long been extinguished, was burning again. The imperial study was completely silent. As time went by, slowly, the setting sun had long been hidden in the mountains of Qinling. A bright moon, which had not been seen for a long time, hung high in the sky of the imperial palace, like a lantern. Under the cover of the night, the lights in the imperial study flickered as people discussed something in low voices. Outside the imperial study, although it was already night, the night sky was like a monster with its bloody mouth wide open, looking down at the busy figures on the ground with a ferocious expression. Chapter 993. The next morning. In the sky, it started to drizzle again. The temperature in the air suddenly dropped. At this time, it seemed to be telling everyone that the majesty of autumn was inviolable. The grassland on Pyrolite Mountain was wet. Before dawn, a group of students and craftsmen in the mountain were running around Pyrolite Mountain while chanting songs that could shake the entire heaven realm. On Shao Mountain, there was also a group of students wearing undershirts. They were sweating on the basketball court that was built on the thatched beach between the teaching building and the dormitory building. At this time, there was no longer the appearance of the thatched beach. Instead, there were more than 10 or 20 basketball courts of various sizes. At this time, on the basketball court, Yu Shernan and others were taking the lead and hitting the basketball on the court. Their movements were simply unsightly. The students who were watching by the side burst into exclamations from time to time. At this moment, Sun Simiao grabbed Chu Suelyang's beard and snatched the basketball from his hand. Then, he smugly ran straight into a student. That student had long been scared speechless by their godly actions. Seeing Sun Simiao coming, how could he dare to block it? He hurriedly stepped aside and made a gesture of invitation. At this time, fortunately, Zhang Feng was not here. Otherwise, he would be so angry that he would vomit blood. A ball hit the backboard. The force that the hardest sandalwood could counterbalance still made the backboard burst into painful groans. "How is it, Brother Boshi? I told you to practice the 5 animal frolics technique with old man, but you didn't want to. Now you know that your physical strength can't keep up, right? Sun Simiao wiped the sweat on his face and sat on the side of the basketball court, panting, drinking hot tea. The remaining 4 old men played again. They seemed to feel that playing with this group of students was not fun, so they resentfully gave up the basketball court. Sitting on the side of the basketball court, Chu Suelyong shook his head and smiled bitterly. I have to admit that I'm old. It hasn't been a quarter of an hour, and I'm so tired that I can't stand straight. Tomorrow, you have to prescribe me a good tonic to nourish my body. Sun Simiao glanced at Chu Suelyong's terrifying belly and his eyelids twitched. Old man, I feel that Fengzi's method is really suitable for you. How so? Chu Suelyong asked while panting. Don't tell me that what this kid said about prolonging one's life is true. This thing can fool others, but we are not old fools. Sun Simiao was stunned. But it all seemed to be true. That thing was really something. However, Sun Simiao still shook his head and said, You're wrong. This thing is indeed good for your health, especially for someone like you. You're so fat and you don't have much exercise. If you can really exercise according to this method, although it can't prolong your life, it can at least let you live for a few more years. Moreover, it can also relieve your asthma and even cure it. Do you believe me? Yes. This time, not only Chu Suelyong, but also Yu Shernan, Ouyang Sun, and the other 2 were completely shocked. Their eyes were wide open. They pointed at the students who were dodging and jumping on the basketball court and said, Old Sun, don't tell me that this is a joke? Because this thing is really not funny at all. Sun Simiao shrugged. I'm telling the truth. Old man really underestimated this thing before. Did he really think that this thing was born out of the 5 animal frolics? Old man, to be honest, although some things are indeed born out of the shadow of the 5 animal frolics, this basketball is better. To put it bluntly, Fengzi hasn't said that this thing can be used in the military. Otherwise, do you think we will have a chance? Yu Shernan said with a little lack of confidence. It seems that Fengzi once said that this thing can be used in military training. This time, the 4 of them instantly fell silent. However, the passion in their eyes didn't diminish in the slightest. Previously, when Zhang Feng said that this thing could strengthen the body, they thought that it was just a saying. Now they had personally experienced it. Putting this aside, with Sun Simiao's praise, how could it be fake? It must be known that Sun Simiao and the few of them had been friends for decades. Everyone knew Sun Simiao's character. When they heard Sun Simiao's words, everyone looked at the basketball court not far away. Just as they were about to go up and move their seemingly rusty bones, Sun Simiao smiled and said, That's enough. You are all old bones. If you continue like this, your bodies will be the first to be unable to take it. Let's go, let's go. Let's go and study how to link this morning exercise, running exercise, and basketball. Fengzi has already dealt with the mid-autumn hunt. We should also put in some effort and let those people see what kind of existence White Deer College is. Chapter 994. Erpi Gully was bustling with activity today. From afar, people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights had joined forces with the local county magistrate to surround the area. The purpose of this was to allow these students to hunt safely, so as to prevent any commoners from accidentally entering and suffering unnecessary injuries. And in this Erpi Gully, when Chang Chumo and the others entered, all the students of White Deer Institute and Chong'an University were like releasing a tiger back into the mountain. They quickly gathered together, along with each other. All the students had been warned in advance by Chang Chumo and the others and brought over. People from the Ministry of Works and the others usually wouldn't enter during the hunt. They didn't have the patience to follow a group of half-grown children around the mountain. At this moment, the mountain had become the home ground of Chang Chumo and the others. Chang Chumo stood on a large rock and imitated Zhang Feng. He waved his hands at the crowd and coughed. I believe everyone has heard of my name. However, for those who don't know my name, listen carefully to Lao Tzu. Lao Tzu is Chen Tinyu, a person who can make Chong and city tremble with a stomp of his feet. This is young Master Li. Of course, as long as he says the word, you won't be able to control whether you live or die. Get to the point. Li Chengqian cupped his fists elegantly and reminded Chang Chumo softly. Chang Chumo said, You must have heard that White Deer College is under the protection of the Crown Prince. Who is the Crown Prince? He is second only to one person and above millions. We all work for the Crown Prince. To put it bluntly, White Deer College and Chong'an University are under the Crown Prince. Do you want to go against the Crown Prince? Hearing this, the expressions of the students who were still indignant finally changed. This was because Chung Tiniu took out a jade pendant from his chest. This jade pendant was nothing special. But the key point was that there were two natural yellow ribbons on the jade plate. A skilled craftsman had carved these two yellow ribbons into two dragons. Everyone in the world who was educated knew about this. Moreover, everyone had a jade pendant on their waist. Although no one had seen this jade pendant before, the teacher had taught them about it during their first lesson in etiquette. The Crown Prince token. This was carved from genuine Hetian jade. In the world, no one dared to carve dragon patterns on this jade, except for the imperial family or those who were bestowed by the imperial family. Anyone who touched it would die. At this moment, Chung Chimo saw that everyone was stunned by the Crown Prince's jade pendant. He then proudly waved the jade pendant in his hand and said, "Now, listen carefully to every word that Lao Tzu said. What Dean Zhongfeng said just now is true. I can also reveal a piece of news to you. If you know what's good for you this time, in 3 years, White Deer College will make an exception and invite you up the mountain. I think you are all smart people and will know what to choose, right? Choose? Choose your ass. You even took out the Crown Prince's jade pendant. Do we have a choice?" If they had known that the rumors were true, Lao Tzu wouldn't have participated in this mid-autumn hunt. The students of Imperial College and Hongwen Guan couldn't help but burst into discussions. Then someone said, "Young Master Chen, my surname is Ji and my name is Huanxiang. My courtesy name is Anka. My surname is Ku and my name is Yuxiang." As the students revealed their names one by one, they said shamelessly, "I hope young Master Chen can put in a few good words for us in front of President Zhang. When the time comes, we will do whatever you ask us to do. How about it?" They were on the right track. Chung Chimo glanced at Li Chengqian and waved his hand. Then, he waved his hand smugly. "I'm tired. This hunt. I understand. How can we let young Master Chen and young Master Li do such a vulgar thing? Let's go hunting now, let's go." Chung Chimo sighed and said, "But Lao Tzu is afraid that someone will complain. What should we do? Our dean doesn't know anything about this." When everyone heard this, the young man surnamed Ku's face immediately turned serious. He waved the dagger in his hand and said, "Everyone should know about Dean Zhongfeng's capabilities. I'm sure you have yearned for young Master Zhongfeng's toast to the gods for a long time, right? That's why we are taking action. Those who go stand here. Those who don't, you know the consequences." His words were full of threats. This made the young man from the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan a little scared. But in the face of power, everyone could only submit. Then, the group of people rushed into the forest as if they had gone mad, looking for prey. When everyone was far away, Chung Chimo sat on the ground and smiled at Li Chengqian. "How was it? Isn't this settled? I told you that this group of people was born in the year of the mule. We had to teach them a lesson." Li Chengqian looked at Chung Chimo and said worriedly, "I don't know if what you did was right. I hope Fengzi doesn't know about this." Ma Zhou, Hao Chujun, Lai Ji, and the others were like fossils in the wind. They were in a state of confusion from the beginning until now. Who am I? Where am I? What the hell am I doing? What did I just see? Chapter 995. Li Chengqian was always very vigilant towards everything, especially when it came to deciding to do everything. From a certain perspective, he seemed to be very impressive on the surface, but Chung Chimo and the others also knew that there was a deep sense of inferiority in Li Chengqian's bones. After all, his father was the current emperor, Li Shimin. And those brothers of his were all very intelligent, especially the fourth prince Li Tai. He was deeply loved by Li Shimin, Empress Zhang's son, and even Li Yuan. It could be said that he was extremely favored. Although this guy always refused to admit his flaws, as childhood playmates, Cheng Chimo, Dugo and the others still knew Li Chengqian very well. Li Chengqian liked to haggle over right and wrong, gains and losses. For example, right now. Once the Crown Prince's decree was issued, what if those aristocratic families passed this matter to the Chancellor of the Imperial College, or the Ministry of Works and Ministry of Rights? What would happen? And if Fengzi knew about it, what would he do? He would always weigh the best solution in the midst of his worries. At this time, Du Go, Wei Shuyu and the others looked at the dazed Li Chengqian and couldn't help but shake their heads slightly. Although they could usually fool around without a care in the world, they knew that Li Chengqian's worries were too heavy. This was also why the emperor wanted Li Chengqian to come and learn from Zhang Feng. Also, how could the emperor not know about Li Chengqian's frequent visits to Yanlai Lu? The crown prince was one of the 4 great demon kings. How could the emperor not know? These matters, as long as one was familiar with them, they would be able to understand the reasoning behind it. It was just that the current Li Chengqian still couldn't let it go. The others also didn't want to point it out. After all, the matter was very simple. It was just that Li Chengqian couldn't accept it, so what could they do? They were very envious of Li Chengqian. Because Zhang Feng and the others basically all learned one thing each, but they put in a lot of effort on this kid. Whatever they learned, they would pass on to him. But what about Li Chengqian? He was always afraid of the tiger in front and the wolf behind. He could only rely on himself to comprehend this. No one could help him. At this moment, the mid-autumn hunt was about to begin, accompanied by the cries of the wild boar and the excited shouts of the students. The Tang emperors loved to hunt. Starting from Li Yuan, there were many records of Li Yuan hunting in the history of the Tang dynasty. For example, the colonel hunted at Fuping, the colonel hunted at Huaqi, the colonel hunted at Nanshan, and so on. This South Mountain was the Erpi Ridge of Lantian County. Hunting practically ran through Li Yuan's entire life as an emperor. Not only did he enjoy hunting, his sons were also the same. Every time they went hunting, Li Jianqing and Li Yuanji would follow. Li Yuanji even often said to others, "I'd rather not eat for 3 days than not hunt for a day." Therefore, after the incident at the Xuanwu Gate, Li Jianqing and Li Yuanji's hobby of hunting became strong evidence of their absurdity. However, criticism was one thing. After Li Shimin ascended the throne, there would still be time for hunting. Moreover, Li Shimin felt that this small-scale hunting was not enough, so the scale began to become bigger and bigger. Hunting was even included in the assessment of the academy every year. It was said that only hunters could show their intelligence and wisdom. With the excited shouts, Cheng Chumo and others looked at Li Chengqian. Finally, they gritted their teeth, picked up their weapons, and joined the hunting team. Seeing this after a slight hesitation, Li Chengqian also stood up, adjusted his state of mind, raised his arms and shouted, "Wait for me!" After Li Chengqian approached, Cheng Chumo said half-jokingly, "What, have you thought it through?" Li Chengqian blushed and glared at Cheng Chumo. "Fengzi is right. We have to rely on ourselves for everything. Let's go. I don't believe that with our ability, we can't beat them." Hearing this, only then did Cheng Chumo and the others burst into laughter. They knew that the knot in Li Chengqian's heart had not been untied. This was a long road. However, if he could understand this point, it proved that he had not stayed in Shao Mountain for so long in vain. Ma Zhou and others still followed behind them with a confused look. They did not know whether it was because the topic was too high-end or because the name of the 4 demon kings had shocked them. However, at this time, these stubborn people of Chong and all gathered together, which was a rare grand occasion. Li Chengqian waved the dagger in his hand, like a small general in a white robe, rushing in the front. The group of stubborn people behind him also followed Li Chengqian into the jungle with strange cries. Those students who were originally surrounding a wild boar suddenly saw Cheng Chumo and others rushing over with murderous intent. They hurriedly abandoned the target and scattered like birds and beasts. Li Chengqian excitedly rolled up his sleeves and said, "Don't move. Watch carefully how I tame this wild boar." When Cheng Chumo and others heard this, their faces could not help but change. They said with some hesitation, "How about I go?" Cheng Chumo did not even look at Cheng Chumo. He waved the dagger in his hand and rushed into the jungle. However, in the quiet jungle, after Li Chengqian's angry roar, Li Chengqian walked out of the jungle with his clothes in a mess. His expression did not change as he threw the dagger in his hand to Cheng Chumo and said, "I'm going to rest for a while. This wild boar spirit is yours." Chapter 996. On the other hand, Zhang Feng had nothing to do. He directly occupied the outpost where he saw Niu Jinda and used it as a temporary resting place. And this beach was also a good place to fish. In less than 2 hours, Zhang Feng caught almost a dozen fish, and these fish were mainly wild grass carps. Although there were many carps, Zhang Feng often ate them. But at this time, if he caught carps and gave these people a reason to criticize him, it would be a little bad. After all, the current emperor had gone crazy and issued an edict that people were not allowed to eat carps, saying that it was a rebellion against the Li family. This made Zhang Feng, who had always liked to eat carps, want to curse. Carps were the best food for picnics. But at this time, because of this matter, Zhang Feng could only endure it. After secretly sharing 2 big carps with his children, he hurriedly took a dozen big grass carps back, ready to win people's hearts and humiliate the dean of the Imperial College. As the dean, Lao Tzu took the lead. Damn, you only know how to sit and eat ready-made food? When Zhang Feng took the 2 girls back to the camp, he bumped into Chang Yaojin and an unfamiliar old man who exuded an air of nobility. The moment she saw the old man, Jingshu's face changed slightly. She trembled slightly. Zhang Feng didn't take it seriously. The old man was wearing a yellow robe with a dragon embroidered on it. His hair and beard were slightly gray, but the mustache around his lips was well trimmed. Zhang Feng almost wanted to touch the mustache to see if it was fake. Chang Yaojin saw Zhang Feng and immediately laughed. Ha ha ha, come, brother Xiaogong, let me introduce you. This is Lao Li's most proud business partner, the youngest viscount of the Tang dynasty, and the dean and chancellor of Chong'an University and White Deer College, Zhang Feng. Oh right, these 2 are his wives. Li Xiaogong's eyes narrowed slightly. He stroked his beard and looked at Zhang Feng. No one knew what he was thinking. Chang Yaojin pulled Zhang Feng aside and said, Fengzi, come, this is a person with a great background. He is a prince and the minister of the Board of Rites. When Zhang Feng heard this, he thought to himself, as expected. This Li Xiaogong was quite a character. Although he was a noble prince, to be able to rely on his own ability to forcefully obtain the second position of the Lingyan Pavilion, it could be seen how high this person's political and military skills were. Behind him, several people dressed in bodyguard uniforms were all looking at Zhang Feng with incomparably sharp eyes. Behind this group of bodyguards were the 3 old guys from the Board of Rites and the Board of Works. They bowed and licked Zhang Feng's lips as they winked at him. Zhang Feng laughed and swung the rattan hanging around his neck. He stretched out his hand and said, Hello, Lord Li. It's an honor to meet you. This little one has admired you for a long time, and your name is constantly ringing in this little one's ears. Oh, tell me, what did you hear? Li Xiaogong didn't stretch out his hand. Zhang Feng awkwardly remembered that this was the Tang dynasty. He hurriedly bowed and said, Student Zhang Feng greets the minister. I just found out that the minister is coming in person, so I was a little excited and abrupt. I hope the minister won't blame me. Seeing Zhang Feng laughing, Li Xiaogong asked in a somewhat unpleasant tone, It's rumored that the braised meat, fine salt, cigarettes, white paper, beer, barbecue, and the liquor Lao Li once gave me in Chong'an were all made by you? That's right. Zhang Feng smiled. Logically speaking, it was impossible to disturb such a big shot during the mid-autumn hunt. Zhang Feng looked at Chang Yaojin suspiciously. Chang Yaojin signaled him to calm down. Chang Yaojin said with a smile, Lord Li, don't just stand there. Let's go and sit down and talk. There's no need. I'm here today just to see this kid. Li Xiaogong didn't give Chang Yaojin face, which made the 3 officials of the Ministry of Works and Rites a little confused. They didn't know what these 2 clowns were up to. Li Xiaogong looked at Zhang Feng indifferently and asked, Let me ask you, there is a rumor on the street that you, as a cook, have opened a tavern in Chong and that no one visits. Usually, there is no customer. Why have you opened 2 academies in such a flamboyant manner recently? What do you mean? Could it be that you want all of the scholars of Great Tang to be like you, becoming butchers? Then won't the Tang dynasty be sneered at? Is he here to pick a fight? Zhang Feng was somewhat unable to figure out what Li Xiaogong's intentions were. Furthermore, for this awesome person to be able to occupy the second place of the Lingyan Pavilion's 24 meritorious officials, there was still some truth to it. At this moment, Zhang Feng could only laugh dryly and apologetically. When the 3 officials of the Ministry of Works and Rites heard this, they couldn't help but feel happy. The 2 officials of the Hongwen Guan School and the Imperial College couldn't help but straighten their backs. They looked at Zhang Feng with a faint smile, as if waiting for him to explain. Haha, Lord Li, what are you talking about? Although I did open a tavern before, who made the rule that people who open taverns can't read and learn? Can't teach and educate people? Take a look at Mr. Yushan. His journey has been a tragic and bumpy one. All of us have seen it with our own eyes. That's why this student only had this thought after learning about this matter. Furthermore, this student was in mourning before, so I didn't leave. However, the ambition in this student's heart has been brewing all the time. That's why I wanted to contribute my meager strength to these insignificant matters. As long as the Tang dynasty is strong and prosperous, even if I have to sacrifice my life. Okay, this official knows. Li Xiaogong was somewhat speechless and interrupted Zhang Feng. He had long heard that this kid's eloquence was outstanding, but now it seemed, it was really frightening. Chapter 997. This time, it was mainly because he was curious about Zhang Feng. Last night, the emperor urgently summoned him to the palace to talk about this matter. Li Xiaogong was ready to see who this guy that the emperor and the retired emperor missed so much was. So he asked his good friend Chang Yaojin to set up a trap to test him. Li Xiaogong really admired Zhang Feng for what he had done before. But when he learned that Zhang Feng had such achievements in military affairs, he couldn't help but be shocked by Zhang Feng. But it was better to hear about him than to meet him. At this time, seeing Zhang Feng's improper behavior, Li Xiaogong was a little angry. As the chancellor of the academy and a viscount, he actually hung such a dirty thing around his neck and didn't even take it off when he saw him. This matter was Fengzi. Chang Yaojin walked to the two people secretly and whispered to Zhang Feng, pointing at his neck. Zhang Feng suddenly realized and patted his head, saying, "Oh right, I almost forgot. Old Chen, what time is it now?" Chang Yaojin was a little speechless. After a long time he said, "It's the last quarter." "It's the last quarter? Lord Li, you haven't eaten yet, right? Come, this is what I just got from hunting. As the dean, I think I have to take the lead, so I brought my family to the river to hunt more than 10 fish. Now I'll cook it for you to satisfy your craving. How about it?" Chang Yaojin's face was a little embarrassed. Was this what he meant? "I'm telling you to throw away all the things on your neck." Why were you so silly? The smiles on the faces of the people from the Ministry of Works became wider, and some even couldn't help it. Li Xiaogong was made to laugh by Zhang Feng's act. "Now that you mention it, I do feel a little hungry. I heard that your cooking skills are good. Old Li has also opened many restaurants in Chang'an. Although the names are a little unpleasant to hear, the food there is really a unique flavor. Well, you can cook it and let me have a taste." Zhang Feng seriously suspected that Lao Li was Li Xiaogong's relative. But when he thought about it carefully, the history records were still a little vague about Li Xiaogong's relatives, so he couldn't help but be a little suspicious. But now that Li Xiaogong said so, he didn't care about it and pulled the two girls to go to a small ditch. Until now. Li Xiaogong glanced at the people behind him and snorted coldly. The purpose of the mid-autumn hunt is to take the lead. Look at Zhang Feng. How old is he? He's the dean of 2 academies and has so many achievements, but he's not arrogant because of his talent. Look at all of you, what are you doing? I'm looking at the 17 fish hanging around Zhang Feng's neck. After today's hunt, each of you must hand over 10 fish to me. If you can't do it, you can resign yourselves. When they heard this, their faces suddenly changed. They didn't dare to say anything. They hurriedly lifted the hem of their official robes and ran out. After they left, Li Xiaogong and Cheng Yaojin laughed loudly. "Old Hey, you lost. Remember that you still owe me 50 kilograms of white paper and 30 jars of white wine." Cheng Yaojin was a little angry. How did you know that this kid would fall for this trick? Li Xiaogong smiled but didn't say anything. Looking at the backs of Zhang Feng and the other two in the distance, he walked with Cheng Yaojin to Zhang Feng with his hands behind his back and said, "It's actually very simple. Zhang Feng is a very simple and pure person, and what I said is reasonable. Did I say something wrong?" "That's true." Cheng Yaojin thought for a while and couldn't help but give a thumbs up. "I admire you, I really admire you. But, is it really okay to do this?" "It's okay. This time I came here to see what these people are up to. I also want to meet the people of the Wang family. I remember that I haven't killed anyone from their family for a long time. Li Shaogong didn't hide his intention to kill at all. Since last night, the emperor had been investigating this matter. He was also very angry about it and was worried that Chang Yaojin and Niu Jinda wouldn't be able to handle it. That was why he called them over. After all, although Li Shaogong was the Minister of Personnel now, he still had the deterrence from the past. Therefore, he was the most suitable person to come. Lord Li, Old Chen, come over quickly. I'll give you a paper-wrapped fish today. At this moment, Zhang Feng was waving at the two of them excitedly. Li Shaogong and Chang Yaojin heard this and the gloominess on their faces disappeared. Let's go. This kid is really carefree. Li Shaogong shook his head speechlessly. On the other hand, Chang Yaojin smiled and said, I think Wang clan and the people of the Imperial College are thinking the same thing about Zhang Feng. Li Shaogong was stunned. Why? The Mitsubishi bayonet will be in old Nio's hands tonight. What do you think this kid is up to? Chang Yaojin looked at Zhang Feng with a complicated expression and said, This kid has probably prepared an inescapable trap and is waiting for these people to take the bait. You mustn't underestimate Zhang Feng. Otherwise, just think about that old man Yuqi and you'll know. Li Shaogong was stunned. Is this kid really that powerful? It's really that strange. Chapter 998. Afternoons always flew by quickly. Unknowingly, the sun had already slowly hung on the western horizon. At this time, Li Shaogong, with a face full of shock, sat down on a stool in the middle of the camp in the valley with the help of Chang Yaojin. Chang Yaojin said speechlessly, The sun has already set. Why haven't these little bastards come back yet? Could it be that something happened? Without waiting for him to finish, Chang Yaojin heard the rustling of footsteps not far away. The first thing that came into view was Chang Chumo and the others. Although Chang Chumo and the others' clothes were tattered, and many of them even had wounds on their bodies, Li Chengqian's face had been cut by something unknown. At this time, the blood had already dried, and the wound didn't seem to be deep. And on their shoulders, they were all carrying prey big and small. Chang Chumo carried 2 wild boars on his shoulders, and Li Chengqian carried a wolf on his back. Although he was the most embarrassed at this time, it could be seen that he was really excited at this time. Seeing that Li Chengqian was fine and had even hunted a wolf, Li Shaogong and Chang Yaojin were really greatly shocked. Chang Yaojin then hurried to the riverside and called Zhang Feng and the other two who were leisurely enjoying themselves. Jing Shu, Zhang Yuyao, and Zhang Feng were sent to the barracks. It was better not to let them see these things, lest they feel uncomfortable at night. With 2 beautiful women lying beside them, it was already quite a test of a person's endurance. In addition, if they were frightened now, then Zhang Feng would have to suffer at night. When Zhang Feng arrived, Li Chengqian and the others were shocked and stood valiantly in the field of Camp D. Zhang Feng was also shocked by everyone's prey. When Zhang Feng walked in, Li Shaogong patted the stool next to him and said, Brother Zhang, come, sit here. I'll introduce you to a few great talents later. Zhang Feng was a little speechless. Didn't you just give some pointers on the marching battle formation? Now you're not leading the troops. Why do you always want to pester Lao Tzu? If you weren't the boss of the Ministry of Personnel, Lao Tzu wouldn't bother with you. But at this time, Zhang Feng could only admit defeat. He laughed dryly and sat beside Li Shaogong. When Li Chengqian and the others saw how close Zhang Feng and Li Shaogong were, they all gaped and looked at Zhang Feng with a stunned face. Mother ***, what happened today? Why was Li Shaogong, commonly known as the King of Hell, bought over by Zhang Feng in just one afternoon? What the ****? What's going on? Li Shaogong didn't care about everyone's gazes. He pointed at the people from White Deer College and Chong'an Academy and said, These people are not bad. Look at that guy who's as thin as a chicken, but he actually hunted a wolf. His courage is commendable. Not bad, not bad. As a student, you can use your wits to hunt a wolf without hurting yourself. 3 years later, I'll guarantee your promotion. Li Shaogong pretended not to know Li Chengqian and pretended to praise him. However, Li Shaogong was really surprised by Li Chengqian. He was usually gentle and weak. He didn't expect him to have such explosive power. Zhang Feng chuckled and said, Lord Li, this person is Li Chengqian. He's Lao Li's son. Li Xiaogong pretended to be shocked. What? He's Lao Li's son? My goodness, not bad, not bad. 3 years later, it seems like Lao Li's family will be able to embark on an official career. Ha ha ha. As he spoke, Li Xiaogong pointed at Feng Yai and said, "This guy is not bad either. Look, he actually hunted 2 badgers. Old man knows about badgers. They're especially hard to catch. According to old man's knowledge, badgers are extremely rare around Chang'an. Not bad, not bad. His luck is not bad. Right, this seems to be your second son, old He?" Chang Chumo was waiting expectantly, but when he heard Li Xiaogong's words, his face instantly darkened. Li Chengqian and the others tried their best to hold back their laughter. Cheng Yaojin didn't care. He laughed and said, "That's right, it's my son." Li Xiaogong nodded. "Not bad. You old brat. You finally have a successor." After Li Xiaogong personally inspected the stalls, the people from the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan came running back. They originally thought that these stubborn people would suddenly go crazy and ask them to help hunt. They thought that their future was hopeless. However, they didn't know why this group of people went crazy and actually went to hunt. Moreover, they were the kind that didn't care about their lives. This couldn't help but arouse everyone's passion. However, they were still a step too late. Looking at the pheasants, frogs, mice and other animals in their hands, and then looking at the other people's prey, was there even a need to compete? Moreover, it was the minister of the Ministry of Personnel, the current imperial prince, who had personally come to inspect. Li Xiaogong also suddenly became interested. He stood up and walked slowly with Chang Yaojin and Zhang Feng while admiring the items in everyone's hands. He was so happy that he couldn't close his mouth. However, after the results of Chang'an University and Secretary Bai Lu were inspected, Li Xiaogong looked at the prey of the students from the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan who had been standing there for a long time. However, in an instant, Li Xiaogong angrily flung his sleeves and left. Chapter 999. Early the next morning, Zhang Feng was woken up by the earth-shattering sounds of training. He quickly put on his clothes and went to the entrance of the tent. He saw Cheng Chumo standing outside Zhang Feng's tent, holding a bamboo pole like a javelin. Zhang Feng's eyelids twitched. "When did you come?" "Reporting to the dean. Last night, when we were returning to defend. F***CKU. Don't you know that the dean's wife is also inside? Get out of my way, you brat." Zhang Feng was furious. Originally, he thought that this brat was tactful. However, at this moment, when he thought of how the dream of the Red Chamber that he talked about with Jingshu and Zhang Yuyao last night might have been leaked, he couldn't help but feel angry. This was still a small matter. What Zhang Feng hated the most was eavesdropping. Cheng Chumo instantly deflated. "Don't get angry. When I arrived, it was already the latter half of the night. Other than your snoring, there was no other business. Furthermore, I was only 10 steps away from your living quarters. I couldn't hear anything." Zhao Yu's face turned into a mischievous grin as he spoke. "You didn't hear anything? How did you know that Lao Tzu snored?" Zhang Feng rolled his eyes. However, he also knew that this was an unusual time. Old Chen arranged for him to come was nothing more than to ensure his safety. Zhang Feng was really touched. "Have you eaten?" Cheng Chumo shook his head and rubbed his stomach. "I had nothing to do last night, so I secretly roasted 3 pheasants. Now that you didn't mention it, I'm really hungry. What are we eating today?" At the mention of food, Cheng Chumo's eyes instantly turned into crescents. He hooked his arm around Zhang Feng's shoulder and refused to let go. Zhang Feng frowned slightly. "We're outside. You'd better know your limits." When Cheng Chumo heard this, he immediately gave a military salute that Zhang Feng had instructed them to do before. "Yes, sir." Zhang Feng shook his head speechlessly. He placed the right hand that was raised above his head between his eyebrows and said, "Let's go." "Yes." The loud roar gave Zhang Feng a big fright. "Lower your voice." Zhang Feng stomped his feet. "Don't scream like a ghost every day. It hurts my eardrums." "Yes." This time, Cheng Chumo's voice was much softer. "This idiot." In the end, Chen Tinyu still hasn't seen much of the world. Zhang Feng sighed in his heart. Chen Tinyu had met the right person to meet him. This brother's perspective was too big. Previously, this guy was a little stubborn with a mouth full of nonsense, but now? Zhang Feng was planning to bring him step by step to the upper class. For example, a big shot like Li Xiaogong. In the distance, Li Xiaogong, Chang Yaojin, and everyone else who was still half asleep were staring at the students of White Deer College and Chong'an University who were doing their morning exercises. There was a lot of discussion. There were even people who were pointing at them and commenting. Li Chengqian naturally became the leader of these people. He stuck his butt out, shouted loud slogans, and put in his best performance. At this time, his forehead was already dripping with sweat. Zhang Feng's arrival made Li Xiaogong very happy. He laughed and said, "President Zhang, you're really a talent who can surprise me all the time." Zhang Feng didn't dare to say that. He waved his hand and said, "You're too kind. This is what a student should do. These things are insignificant." Flattery wasn't something that could be worn all the time. For example, at this time, the 3 old guys from the Ministry of Works and Rights, as well as the 2 old guys from the Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan, looked at Zhang Feng's eyes as if they wanted to poke Zhang Feng out. Zhang Feng pretended not to see the 5 people's gazes. He smiled and said, "I'm sorry to disturb Lord Li. These students of mine can't sleep in the morning, so I thought about it and evolved a simple exercise method from the 5 animal frolics. On the one hand, when they wake up in the morning, they can relax their muscles and improve their memory. After the strenuous exercise they can eat. It's good for the healthy development of the body." Li Xiaogong stroked his beard and said with a smile, "Is this some medicine from your academy?" Yes. This is it. I didn't expect Lord Li to know this. It's really an honor." Li Xiaogong glared at Zhang Feng. "Don't flatter me. You'd better explain it to the old man later. Otherwise, getting a flogging is a light punishment. Disqualifying you from this hunt is also a light punishment." Zhang Feng was like a monk. He was a little confused. What the hell was going on? Wasn't everything fine just now? What was wrong with him this time? However, at this time, Li Xiaogong didn't pay attention to Zhang Feng. Instead, he shook his head and stared at Li Chengqian and the others doing 5 rounds of morning exercises. Then he said with some dissatisfaction, "Lord Qian, Lord He." Hearing this, the 2 old men from the Ministry of Personnel Affairs and the Ministry of Works hurried forward and bowed beside Li Xiaogong. Li Xiaogong pointed at the field and asked with a smile, "Is there still a need to compete?" The 2 couldn't help but feel awkward. "Sir, this is the rule set by His Majesty. Although the overall performance of the students from White Deer College and Chong'an University is very good, we still think that we should do things according to the rules." Li Xiaogong looked at the 2 meaningfully, then nodded and said, "Since that's the case, this official announces that the debate that was supposed to last 3 days will be changed to 1 day. Today's debate is both the beginning and the end. Everyone will proceed with the debate under this official's witness. What do the 3 of you think? Do I, Li Xiaogong, have the right to do so?" When the 3 people from Hongwen-Guan, Imperial College, and Ministry of Rights heard this, the corners of their mouths twitched. Was there a need to ask? Was there a need to ask? If you stomp your foot, we'll tremble. You're asking us now? Wasn't this a joke? The few of them smiled and pretended to look relieved as they said, "We'll listen to Lord Li's orders." Chapter 1000. Upon hearing this, Li Xiaogong gestured with his right hand and said indifferently, "Since it's the mid-autumn hunt and we are all scholars, why don't we have a debate?" Debate? They couldn't help but ask in their hearts. The dean of the Imperial College, Lu Hongwen, and the dean of the Hongwen-Guan, Ouyang Kai, were a little confused at this moment. Needless to say, the 3 elders didn't dare to say anything. After all, they were nothing in front of Li Xiaogong. Zhang Feng was also interested. Seeing that they were a little timid and didn't dare to say anything, he asked, "Sir, how are we going to debate, and what are we going to debate?" Li Xiaogong pointed to the students below the field and said, "According to the rules, the most important part of the mid-autumn hunt, other than the hunt, is the debate competition." As he spoke, Li Xiaogong looked around with a faint smile and said loudly, "Thanks to Prince Zhang, the previous autumn hunt prioritized the students. However, when I just arrived, I actually saw Prince Zhang setting an example and personally participating in the hunt. Since that's the case, all the deans who come must also participate in all the hunting activities in the future. I'm ashamed to say that Old Man and the others have been focusing on the students but forgot to set an example. Don't worry, the Old Man will definitely report to the Emperor about your contribution. Haha. It's not worth mentioning. This is just a small matter, really not worth mentioning. Zhang Feng chuckled and waved his hand. What the hell is this old guy doing? Although Zhang Feng was smiling, he couldn't help but criticize in his heart. After hearing these words, it seemed to be announcing the official start of the debate. These students were all extremely intelligent people. At this moment, when they saw that the atmosphere on the stage was filled with the smell of gunpowder, they had already hurriedly found an opponent and went forward to start the debate in an orderly manner. They were afraid. They were afraid of being implicated. That would be terrible. In the field, the three people from the Ministry of Personnel, Ministry of Rights, and Ministry of Works looked at Li Xiaogong in shock. They didn't know what he was trying to do. Cheng Yaojin was also a little stunned. However, he seemed to have understood something. He crossed his arms and watched the show. As for Jing Shu and Zhang Yuyao, the two girls originally wanted to take a look at the top talents of the world. However, as they listened, their attention was drawn to Zhang Feng. They couldn't help but open their eyes wide in curiosity and stare at the few people without blinking. Zhang Feng smiled and made a gesture of invitation. I hope Lord Li can tell me what to do. I've long heard that Prince Zhang is a master of poetry and poetry. I've also heard rumors from Lao Li and others that Prince Zhang once recited 100 poems in a night. However, I've never seen it before. Everyone here, except for Lao Hei, basically has dabbled in poetry. Naturally, you know that the fastest time a poem takes to be completed is more than a month. However, you said that he recited 100 poems in a night. That's why the old man wants to see Prince Zhang's talent in poetry. Hearing this, Lu Hongwen and the others couldn't help but gather with the people from the Ministry of Works and the Ministry of Rights. They whispered softly for a while. Then, Lord He from the Ministry of Works asked, May I ask Lord Li, is this debate related to poetry? However, you also know that Prince Zhang has a reputation in poetry. Isn't this a little inappropriate? Zhang Feng's reputation was out there. At this time, if Li Xiaogong arranged it this way, it would definitely be inappropriate. That was definitely not appropriate. This was simply prepared for Zhang Feng. However, the few of them thought about it again and figured out something different. Although Zhang Feng's poems were very popular, no one had really seen them or heard of those 100 poems. They had only heard bits and pieces of Zhang Feng's poems. Although everyone wanted to see it for themselves, what was this? This was the Mid-Autumn Hunt. Moreover, it was hosted by the Minister of Personnel, Li Xiaogong. What did this mean? The people were not fools. They definitely knew that this was obviously biased towards Zhang Feng. Therefore, at this time they wanted to prevaricate. For example, at this time, Sun Hongwen hurriedly came forward and said, replying to Lord Li, this debate will be about Confucius and Mencius, the 4 books and 5 classics, as well as other miscellaneous studies. This is a test of the foundation of an academy. Since Lord Li said that we should have a debate with a dean, why should we waste time on poetry? Poetry is something that everyone has. It is difficult to reflect a person's talent from this alone, let alone the talent of a dean of an academy. Therefore, this humble official has a presumptuous request. Before Sun Hongwen finished speaking, Li Xiaogong glanced at him and said lightly, Before I came here, I was secretly ordered by His Majesty. Do you think that His Majesty said something wrong? If so, I will prepare a fast horse for you. You can go back to the capital immediately and refute this in front of His Majesty. This official has nothing to say. Sun Hongwen instantly did not know what to say. His face suddenly changed. At this time, if he went to the palace to ask His Majesty, not to mention the time it would take to go back and forth, who would dare to go against His Majesty's order? Who could stand this? The emperor wanted to see Zhang Feng's poetry attainments. Who were they? However, Li Xiaogong had also considered some problems. He smiled and waved his hand. Since Principal Sun has said so, and this official has also considered this matter, then how about we use the appraisal of poems as a gimmick? Wouldn't that be fair? Moreover, you should have been immersed in this for more than 30 years. Are you afraid of a young boy in his early 20s? Old man does not believe that this boy can recite poetry in 7 steps like Chao Ji. Chapter 1001. Li Xiaogong was right. Even if he started learning poetry when he was in his mother's womb, he only had 20 years. Throwing out the first 3 years and removing the 3 years of literacy, he only had 14 years. What could he do in these 14 years? How many books could he read? How many ancient books could he read? As for the rumor that he could compose 100 poems in one night, it seemed that the emperor didn't believe it and wanted to expose this person's conspiracy. So, after all, those poems were just rumors. No one knew if this kid had actually created them in a single night. Everyone thought about it and they couldn't help but feel a little excited. Lord He from the Ministry of Works gathered his courage and stepped forward. He cupped his fist and bowed. Since Lord Li has said so, we can only respect him. But for the sake of fairness, Old Man thinks that the quality of the poems should be the most important. What do you think? Zhang Feng smiled. He didn't know what Li Xiaogong was up to, but after listening to Zhang Feng, he realized something. Lao Li's means were really something. Not only did he call the 4 great scholars brothers, but he could also invite the Duke of the Imperial Court. He was also the second person in the Lingyan Pavilion. At this time, he heard Li Xiaogong say that the emperor sent him here because of this. What kind of means did Lao Li have? Could it be that the poem he recited after that night of drunkenness had reached the emperor's hands? The more Zhang Feng thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. Otherwise, why were there only a few scattered poems in the market? There were no more than 10 poems in total. This was really inexplicable. If it was an ordinary businessman, this kind of thing would bring glory to the family no matter how much they treasured it. Even if they wanted to hide it, it couldn't be hidden. However, Lao Li actually kept it a secret. Moreover, it seemed to have appeared out of nowhere. After thinking about it, Zhang Feng was surprised to find that he didn't know which street or market Lao Li lived in Chang'an City. Just as Zhang Feng's imagination was running wild. Everyone had finalized this matter. Li Xiaogong held his stomach and looked at Zhang Feng meaningfully. He asked, President Zhang, what do you think of this arrangement? Zhang Feng was a little speechless, but he also knew that this was helping him. He hurriedly smiled and said, just listen to Lord Li. I will definitely obey. That's good. In that case, come. Li Xiaogong waved his hand faintly. In an instant, several servants hurried forward and knelt in front of Li Xiaogong. Li Xiaogong ordered faintly, prepare the banquet and music. After that, Li Xiaogong took the lead and went in another direction. Cheng Yaojin looked at Zhang Feng and winked. His meaning was self-evident. Zhang Feng couldn't help but laugh in surprise. He simply followed Cheng Yaojin and the 2 women behind Li Xiaogong and said something to the 2 women. Jing Shu also took the opportunity to tell them some things to pay attention to at the banquet. After all, she didn't know if Zhang Feng had attended a banquet of this level before. Presumably, he had never seen such a scene before. This level of wine was very particular. All aspects of etiquette had to be paid attention to. Otherwise, they would be asked to leave the banquet on the spot. If it was serious, they would lose their heads. Lu Hongwen, Ouyang Kai, and the 5 old men from the Ministry of Rights and the Ministry of Personnel were busy at this time. After hurriedly giving instructions, they followed behind these people while muttering. From time to time, 1 or 2 quarrels could be heard. However, although Li Xiaogong and Zhang Feng could hear it, they didn't take it to heart. After all, they didn't deserve it. The banquet was set up by a river in Erpi Gully. Although this river wasn't very wide, one could see the soft sand in the river at a glance. In the calm and clear water, one could see fish swimming happily in the water from afar. Zhang Feng estimated that the deepest part of this river was only around the calf. In this river, there were already 7 tables set up at this time. 2 of them were on the beach at the top. Obviously, these were the seats of Li Xiaogong and Cheng Yaojin. Below these 2 tables were 3 more tables. Obviously, these were the seats of Zhang Feng, Lu Hongwen, and Ouyang Kai. Downstream, 3 tables were arranged side by side. Needless to say, these were the seats of the officials of the 3 ministries. At this time, there were all kinds of seasonal fruits and wine placed on the tables. The slightly turbid grape wine in the cup faintly emitted a trace of demonic light. Although it was autumn, the maple leaves swayed in the wind and spun, leisurely falling on the surface of the river and the tables. This scene was somewhat poetic. There was a trickle of water below and maple leaves above. It looked somewhat elegant. Zhang Feng didn't expect that Li Xiaogong, who was born in the martial arts world, could be so elegant after he got off the horse and pacified the world. A group of singers were playing something on the shore. Zhang Feng's sharp senses even discovered that in front of this group of singers, there was also a table on a carpet on the beach. However, at this time, there was an incense burner and a guzheng on the table. Two female servant girls, holding an incense burner and a round fan, stood charmingly next to the table. It was unknown who they were waiting for to arrive. Zhang Feng took a deep look at Jing Shu. After seeing that there was nothing wrong with her, he went to the beach with the others. It was rare for Zhang Feng to have some interest. He simply took off his shoes and socks, and just like that, walked barefoot into the river. At this time, it was noon. The sunlight seemed to warm the river. Stepping into it, Zhang Feng couldn't help but moan. So comfortable. Chapter 1002. They were all people with self-restraint. After glancing at Zhang Feng, they withdrew their gazes again. It was the first time that a banquet was held in the river. If it were any other time, they would really want to take off their shoes and socks like Zhang Feng. It would be comfortable, but they didn't dare to do so. They wanted to save face. When Li Xiaogong saw that they were seated, he looked at Jing Shu, who was beside Zhang Feng, and nodded slightly. I've long heard that Miss Jing Shu's zither skills are extraordinary. Would you do me the honor of joining us today? After all, Jing Shu was a woman who had seen grand occasions. She stood up and bowed slightly to Li Xiaogong. She said that she was flattered and then remained silent. When Zhang Feng saw this, he touched Jing Shu's small hand slightly. Jing Shu nodded and walked in the direction of the zither. This scene made Li Xiaogong and Cheng Yaojin look at each other and then laugh. Jing Shu pretended not to hear them and walked straight to the zither. The two maids beside the zither saw Jing Shu take her seat and gently waved their round fans. They looked so beautiful and set off Jing Shu's otherworldly aura. After the zither sounded, Li Xiaogong looked at everyone indifferently. In that case, let's start today. Prince Zhang. After Li Xiaogong sat down, he raised his cup. Zhang Feng thought that Li Xiaogong wanted to drink with him. He hurriedly raised his cup, only to find that Li Xiaogong had already put the cup on the table and seemed to be resting with his eyes closed. Zhang Feng was slightly stunned. He saw that the two people opposite him, as well as the three people from the Ministry of Works and Rights, were covering their mouths and snickering. Cheng Yaojin coughed and made a gesture of reciting a poem. Zhang Feng was speechless. Damn it. Let Lao Tzu compose a poem. You're a man with a military background. Why are you pretending to be noble and virtuous here? Seeing this, Zhang Feng was slightly unhappy. He lazily clasped his hands to Li Xiaogong. In reply to Lord Li, I only know some sour sentences. How dare I embarrass myself in front of Lord Li and the two presidents? As soon as these words came out, several people instantly looked at Li Xiaogong. Only then did they understand that they wanted to give this guy a chance to stand out. Did they want to use their hands to help Zhang Feng? Did they want to use their hands to prove Zhang Feng's reputation? They were not fools. Of course, they knew that on the 15th of August, on the night of the Mid-Autumn Festival, Zhang Feng would become a great Confucian scholar at the Mid-Autumn Festival Poetry Meet. This poetry meet was organized by the 4 great Confucian scholars for Zhang Feng. If this guy could become famous at the poetry meet, his reputation as a great Confucian would be confirmed. This was something that no one wanted to see. Once Zhang Feng became a great Confucian scholar, the Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan would have nothing to do with the 4 great academies in Chang'an City. After all, at this time, White Deer College already had the 4 great Confucian scholars. Although they were just sitting there, it was already a golden signboard. During this period, White Deer College did not charge tuition. It attracted poor students, who lined up from Chang'an City to the foot of the barren mountain every day. If this, Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai did not even dare to think about it. If this went on, even if the Imperial College in Hongwen-Guan invited more great Confucian scholars to sit there, they would not be able to compete with White Deer College and Chang'an University. If this was just a landing, Whether Zhang Feng was a great Confucian scholar or not, today's deeds would be spread out. The titles of the chairman of the two great academies and the youngest intuition in the Tang dynasty would be thrown everywhere. By then, the two great academies in Chang'an City would have no chance to stand out. After all, Zhang Feng's name was famous in China during this period. It even caused a series of incidents in the Turks, Tubo, and other countries. This guy's poem, Bringing in the Wine, was famous in Chang'an City for a period of time. At least for more than a month, this poem was praised in the streets and alleys. It was even regarded as a work of God. However, this guy rarely wrote poems and came up with other new tricks, which gradually faded away. However, as long as someone mentioned it, they would instantly think of this poem and Zhang Feng. At this time, how could the three people from the Ministry of Works and Rights not see that Li Xiaogong was biased towards Zhang Feng? Although they wanted to stop it, after all, if Zhang Feng's reputation was affected, their families would be at a disadvantage. When the higher-ups blamed them, it would be really difficult for them to explain. However, Li Xiaogong was after all a relative of the emperor. They could only sit and do nothing. Now the two deans, Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai, were having a headache. They could only pretend that they did not know anything, drinking alone and eating the delicious food on the table. In fact, Zhang Feng was just guessing. After all, the experience of his previous life was not enough for him to deal with everything. Moreover, he could not remember clearly what happened in the past. The history in his memory was just something that was passed down orally. It could even be tampered with. He really did not know what really happened in the Tang dynasty. At this time, Zhang Feng also faintly felt that some of the current emperors had ulterior motives. Li Shimin was born in the military. Although he could summon the wind and summon the rain in the imperial court, there were still many people who opposed him. They said that he was just an emperor on horseback and so on. In particular, the Confucian scholars and the nobles in Shandong were the most arrogant. However, although Li Shimin wanted to touch the nobles in Shandong, he did not have the confidence to do so. It was only because the nobles in Shandong were known as the descendants of Confucius and were the gathering place of the world's civilization. In addition, the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs, as well as Guanlong, and other aristocratic families had already taken away the imperial power before the Tang dynasty. Although he wanted to, he was powerless to deal with it. The appearance of Zhang Feng and the White Deer College seemed to give the emperor, who had never met him, a glimmer of hope. He wanted to let Zhang Feng replace the Imperial College and Hongwen Guan, the 2 aristocratic families, to enter the imperial court. Zhang Feng could not help but feel that this was the emperor's purpose in sending Li Xiaogong here. Zhang Feng was far away, but he could still see clearly that Li Xiaogong's eyes had slowly narrowed. There was a trace of appreciation in his deep eyes. Of course, he was appreciating that Zhang Feng could understand his meaning. Zhang Feng naturally understood Li Xiaogong's meaning, but he also meant to warn him that if he did something good, there would be unexpected results even when he entered the imperial court, let alone here. Seeing that Zhang Feng seemed to have understood his meaning, Li Xiaogong smiled and said, "Why don't you recite a poem and let the 2 libationers judge it? If it doesn't work, they can punish it with wine. What do you think?" What else could he do? Zhang Feng slowly sat back on the chair. He smiled and nodded. "Okay." Chapter 1003. Today, Zhang Feng's mental state was very poor. The 2 women did not know where they heard that after drinking, he would talk a lot, and would answer any question you asked. Last night, the 2 women pestered Zhang Feng to talk about the Red Chamber, but Zhang Feng was really unwilling to talk about it. After all, that thing consumed too much energy, and now he had something important to do. The 2 women were also clever, and directly got Zhang Feng drunk. It was unknown which big mouth told the 2 women this trick. After getting drunk, Zhang Feng's poetic way of passing the time, in one breath, he talked from Su-Shi to dawn. If it were not for the severe headache and swelling in his head, coupled with the fact that he really could not hold in his urine, Zhang Feng might still be lying on the bed at this time. Until now, Zhang Feng's head was still somewhat groggy. At this time, the warm water from the soles of his feet washed the soft sand, flowing between the soles of his feet. A burst of comfortable and numb feeling made Zhang Feng somewhat drowsy. In order to not be sleepy here, Zhang Yuyao reluctantly picked up the wine that Zhang Yuyao poured for him, and drank it to the brim. He smacked his lips and frowned. Lu Hongwen, Ouyang Kai, and the others all knew some of Zhang Feng's methods. At this time, they were all looking at Zhang Feng, frowning, and silently calculating for him about the time it took to brew a cup of tea. The originally abnormally sleepy Zhang Feng simply laid his whole body in the river, allowing the river water to flow between his cheeks and hair. He even faintly felt a few small fish slap his cheeks a few times. After a little sober, Zhang Feng sat up and stretched out his hand. Zhang Yuyao was very sensitive to this kind of thing. Changing to a large bowl, he filled it to the brim with wine for Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng frowned slightly, but still raised his head and drank the entire bowl. Closing his eyes for a moment, he opened his lips slightly and sang with his eyes slightly narrowed. Wine and song, life is short, like the morning dew, the passing days are bitter, my heart is for you, I sing until now, I have a guest, the drum and the flute, the moon is clear, when will it retreat? The banquet is full of perseverance, the heart is full of gratitude, the moon and the stars are sparse, the crow flies south, circling the tree 3 times. Which branch can lean against the mountain, not tired of the high sea, not tired of the deep sea, the Duke of Zhou's nourishment, the whole world is in my heart. Just like how Zhang Feng pretended to be pretentious with the poem. The moment the poem came out, even the musician who was playing the music stopped playing. As for Jing Shu, she was playing the guzheng passionately along with the poem. The poetic quality of the poem, coupled with the zither music, caused the artistic conception of the poem to explode to the extreme. He blinked and calmly said, "Thank you for letting me win." However, as expected, this old guy didn't have any good intentions. After this old guy drank a cup of wine, he got up drunkenly and clasped his hands to Li Shaogong. Although Prince Zhang's poem is very good, and many famous people in the literary world can't even compose such a beautiful poem, this old man feels that if this matter is debated, this old man is a little unconvinced. If Prince Zhang can compose a poem based on our current situation, then we can be considered to be convinced. Ouyang Kai, Lord He, and Lord Qian heard this and nodded repeatedly to express their agreement. Li Shaogong heard this and smiled slightly but didn't say anything. Instead, he looked at Zhang Feng and asked with a smile, "Prince Zhang, what do you think?" Chapter 1004. Zhang Feng didn't say anything. He only cupped his fist and made an inviting gesture. Although the crowd didn't understand what Zhang Feng's gesture meant, the general meaning was clear. Since this lord wants to use the current scenery to make a poem, can you give me a hint? Otherwise, this old man will accuse me of cheating again. You impudent! How can you measure the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain? We are just speaking the truth and have no intention of targeting you. Could it be that Prince Zhang is angry out of humiliation? Zhang Feng looked at the two of them with a fake smile and didn't say anything. Instead, he turned to look at Lord He and Lord Qian from the Ministry of Works and Rights and said, "If that's the case, why don't we ask Lord Qian, Lord He, and this lord to give me a hint based on the current situation? If I can make a poem of the same quality as the one you just made, what will you say? If I can't, what will you say?" This was simply the heavens helping me. When the 3 of them heard this, their eyes flashed with joy. "Since you want to die, then the old man and the other 2 will fulfill your wish." Lord He smiled and said, "What does Lord Li think?" The 3 of them were smart. They knew that Zhang Feng was digging a hole for them, so they threw the hole to Li Shaogong. Li Shaogong also didn't know what Zhang Feng was up to. He nodded calmly and said, "Just do as I say." Lord He and Lord Qian looked at each other and smiled. Lord He then looked around and said, "It's autumn now. There are maple leaves, flowing water, and the sound of zither. Why don't Prince Zhang recite a poem based on this beautiful scenery? If Prince Zhang can make a poem similar to the one just now, we are willing to respectfully address Prince Zhang as Sir. What do you think? If Prince Zhang can't do it, he just needs to drink a cup of wine. What do you think?" "Yes." Zhang Feng nodded faintly. His eyes swept across the faces of these people one by one. He could not help but sneer in his heart. If it was an ordinary person, they would have some stage fright at this time, but was Zhang Feng an ordinary person? As a young man of the 21st century, he was also a top liberal arts student. Poems and songs could be recited at the drop of a hat. Zhang Feng thought for a while and finally decided to use the poem by the poet sage Du Fu, Qiu Xing 8 Poems, 1. On the one hand, Shaolin's wild elder Du Fu's reputation was there for all to see. Moreover, this poem was more appropriate for the current situation. Zhang Feng brewed his wine for a while. With one hand holding the wine pot, he faced upwards and let the breeze caress his cheeks. After a while, Zhang Feng slowly recited, "Dew withers and injures the maple forest. Clouds and rosy clouds disappear. The waves in the river surge to the sky. Plugged in the wind and clouds, the earth is e'en. From chrysanthemums, tears are shed. A lonely boat connects to the heart of the hometown. Cold clothes are everywhere. Chang'an City is anxious at dusk." The poet sage Du Fu was the poet that Zhang Feng admired the most. Who said that? Li Bai seemed to be more famous. However, regarding the understanding of events, everyone had their own preferences. Zhang Feng was biased towards the poet sage Du Fu. It was not because of anything else, but because he liked it. At this time, after Zhang Feng's poem, the entire scene fell into a short silence. It was indeed silent. This was the effect that Zhang Feng wanted. The previous poem was pieced together by himself. Then, what about this poem? If you dare to tell Lao Tzu that this poem was pieced together by others, Lao Tzu would really fight you with a knife. No, I'll fight you with a Mitsubishi Army knife. If you really can't do it, find me a King poem that is the same as this one. Moreover, this poem was suitable for Zhang Feng at this time. Zhang Feng did not like this kind of scheming. Ever since they came to Erpi Ridge, Zhang Feng had his own difficulties even though he brought the two girls to tour the mountains and rivers every day. Being a stranger in a foreign land was the most appropriate way to describe Zhang Feng at this time. The annual Mid-Autumn Festival was coming soon. However, this year, Zhang Feng had to spend his time in the Tang dynasty of this parallel world. Although he was doing well at this time, he was after all a 20-year-old soul. Just like the meaning of the last sentence in the poem, it was time to add winter clothes. In Chang'an City, the topic of winter clothes could be seen everywhere. Gradually, the topic of winter clothes was on everyone's lips. What about Zhang Feng? His favorite clothes, mobile phone, computer, and so on had all disappeared. Instead, he was tossing and turning in this world. Even though he was wearing gorgeous clothes, he still felt a little cold, unable to make him feel a little warm. Even though he had two beautiful women by his side, including Yu, who was comparable to the top beauty of the later generations, he still couldn't let go of the future. Yes, at this moment, Zhang Feng was homesick, very, very homesick. At this moment, the ones who were the most shocked were the few people present. This poem was really too wonderful. Everyone had a different understanding of it. Therefore, at this time, everyone was silent. Even Jingshu stopped playing the guzheng at this time. She lowered her head with tears in her eyes, and her shoulders were trembling slightly. Zhang Feng put his hands behind his back. His cheeks were red. Standing in the water, he stared at the two people from the Imperial College and the Hongwen Guan. He did not have any special feelings for the two of them. He just did not like their behavior. Even then, Lu Xun's expectations and optimism were still in the Shandong aristocratic family. Chapter 1005. But in reality, Zhang Feng didn't take the initiative to provoke these people. But these people wanted to compare themselves with Zhang Feng. At this moment, Chang Yaojin stared coldly at Lu Hongwen and Ouyang Kai and said, "Earlier, Old Man heard someone mention the Mid-Autumn Hunt in Chang'an City. Originally, Old Man didn't want to get involved in this matter. After all, I believe that Zhang Feng can deal with this matter. However, Old Man really can't stand the way some people are doing things. This Mid-Autumn Hunt is supposed to be passed on to the deans of the various academies 1 month before the start of the Mid-Autumn Hunt. Why did it only reach Zhang Feng a few days before the start of the Mid-Autumn Hunt? Do you think that Zhang Feng is easy to bully?" While speaking, Chang Yaojin's eyes flashed with a cold light as he stared at the 3 people from the Ministry of Works and Rights. The 3 of them suddenly trembled. Only then did they remember that this was Chang Yaojin, the great devil of chaos. If they provoked him and this person killed them here, they would die in vain. A thin layer of cold sweat involuntarily appeared on the faces of the 5 people. At this moment, Chang Yaojin's words were somewhat inappropriate, especially in such a delicate situation. It seemed abnormally unreasonable. This meant that the matter between Zhang Feng and the Imperial College's Hongwen Guan and the Ministry of Works and Rights was officially out in the open. Although everyone knew that there was a problem, there was still room for reconciliation if they didn't fall out. But now, there was still no room for reconciliation. When Lord He of the Ministry of Works heard this, he looked slightly displeased. He looked at Chang Yaojin and said, "There are indeed some aspects of this matter that are lacking in consideration, but we are just following the rules. Logically speaking, Chang'an University and White Deer College are not qualified to participate in this year's mid-autumn hunt. It's only because of Prince Zhang's previous actions of providing relief to the disaster victims that we decided to inform you at the last minute that Prince Zhang will participate in this year's Mid-Prince Zhang. This is all recorded in the laws of the Tang dynasty. If you feel that it's inappropriate, you can report us to Lord Li. But Lord Li, you should be clear about this matter." Lord Qian of the Ministry of Appointments secretly glanced at Li Xiaogong. When he saw that Li Xiaogong didn't say anything, he mustered up his courage and said, "That's right. Lord He is right about this matter. The laws of the Ministry of Appointments clearly state that academies that have been established for less than a year are not qualified to participate in the mid-autumn hunt. On one hand, it's because the academy has just been established and many things haven't been sorted out properly. Chapter 1006. At this time, no one from the Ministry of Works and Rights, Imperial College, and Hongwen Guan saw Cheng Yaojin and Li Xiaogong leave angrily. Naturally, they also saw the person who just flashed and disappeared. They could not help but think quickly in their minds about who exactly appeared here at this time. At the same time, they secretly breathed a sigh of relief. The sudden appearance of this mysterious person was really timely. Otherwise, who knew what would happen at this time? Zhang Feng was too lazy to think so much. After all, they had already made arrangements before. Since these people dared to appear at this time, it proved that these people had already prepared for the worst. Zhang Feng did not care. After all, he had the Mitsubishi military knife in hand, and old Niu Zi who had been paying attention to these people's whereabouts. In the dark, he was not afraid of these people. Moreover, he was now an official of the imperial court. And Li Xiaogong, the great god, was by his side. Naturally, there would be a tall person to stand up for him. The debate ended abruptly. Chen Chumo and the others' debate was still going on. The debate was actually very simple. That was, if words did not work, they would use force. The so-called force was actually the rugby that Zhang Feng had prepared for a long time before. It was also an activity that the academy had reported in advance. As long as he could make the other party shut up and admit defeat, then as long as it was not that kind of underhanded method, it would basically be allowed. The rugby matter came too quickly. Therefore at this time, Zhang Feng had already changed the rugby to kuju. However, he had changed into a rugby iron protective suit. If you dare to touch it, come on, Lao Tzu will stand here and let you hit it. As long as you can break this armor, it's my loss. At this time, when Zhang Feng and the 5 people who had a lot on their minds returned to the camp, the kuju had already started. In the field, Li Chengqian and the others attracted a lot of attention. Their visual impact of the equipment, in addition to the previous warning from Cheng Chumo and the others, these people were just going through the motions. After all, the expressions on their faces when they returned explained everything. The 3 people from the Ministry of Works and Rights, Lu Hongwen, and Ouyang Kai absent-mindedly stopped the competition. There was no way for the competition to continue. The score was simply unbearable to watch. It was as if this was a one-man show for Cheng Chumo and the others. If this group of bastards continued to perform, the students from both families would probably all run away. What the 5 of them were most worried about was Zhang Feng's revenge, as well as the fact that the captured person might confess something or get caught. With Li Xiaogong's methods, it would be easy for them to get something out of that person's mouth. Therefore at this moment, it would be best if they could end this as soon as possible and spread the news back. As for the result, it was no longer important. As long as they could maintain the position that the family had spent a lot of money to obtain, it would be fine. In less than 3 years, the 5 of them would be able to rise again. Kuju was basically not worth watching. Zhang Feng knew the result without even looking. However, Zhang Feng's novel method, coupled with the ability that Zhang Feng had displayed and Li Xiaogong's unyielding method, made the five of them restrain themselves a little. At the very least, when they looked at Zhang Feng, they were no longer so full of thorns. After all, they knew what they were doing. If they really angered Li Xiaogong, even if he killed them in court, their families wouldn't say a word for them. After all, they were only outer sect disciples. Kuju was not troublesome. After 2 days of competition, it was time to announce the results. After all, it would be strange if the people from White Deer College, who were wearing protective equipment, did not win the championship. Lord He chuckled as he announced the perfect end of the mid-autumn hunt. White Deer College and Chong and University had won the championship. Lord He waved his hand and said, "Next, let us admire the never-before-seen rugby that Lord Zhang reported to our department." This time, it was time for the one-man show between White Deer College and Chong and University. As soon as the rugby ball was played, it instantly caused a burst of exclamations. Even the Ministry of Works, the Ministry of Rights, and the 2 deans joined in the discussion. They wanted to get some training methods from Zhang Feng. After all, these things were important. Once they were realized, it would be beneficial to the reputation of the academy, the reputation of the 3 departments, and the promotion in the future. After completing the one-man show, Zhang Feng chuckled and cupped his fists at the 5 people. "Sirs, would the 2 deans do me the honor of visiting my Kuan Mountain? After all, Lontian County is not far from my White Deer College. It's only a day's journey." At this time, no one's mind was filled with the spectacular scene of the football game that Zhang Feng had arranged before. Seeing Zhang Feng's invitation, how could they have any reason to refuse? Even if Zhang Feng did not invite them, they would probably pester him to go up Shao Mountain to take a look. Most importantly, they wanted to see how Shao Mountain looked like. The name of the White Deer Institute had been spreading like wildfire in Chang'an City for a month or so. Every commoner would often talk about the White Deer Institute. They were also very curious about the White Deer Institute. Previously, there had been some estrangement between the 2 of them, but now, Zhang Feng didn't seem to mind. Then he looked at the students behind him and asked, "Oh sure, why don't we let the students run first? Or do exercises early? It's early. If Feng and the others could come back, the news." Ouyang Soon was a very rule-abiding person. This time, it was the time for morning exercises. Yu Shernan looked at the excited students behind him and frowned slightly. He waved at Cheng Chumo and said, "Did you ask when they will arrive?" Chen Chumo was a little uncertain. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "Probably soon. Why don't I send someone down?" "Forget it. I'll go down and take a look myself." Yu Shernan nodded. Chen Chumo heard this. He hurriedly rode down the mountain. After Chumo left, Yu Shernan waved his hand and said, "Qian Wanli." Qian Wanli, who was standing in front of the crowd, stood straight. Hearing this, he took 3 big steps forward and shouted, "Here!" Yu Shernan nodded with satisfaction and waved at him. "The morning exercises can begin." "Yes." Qian Wanli saluted and then turned 360 degrees. He shouted at the students, "Look forward. Be at ease. Attention. The 8th set of radio gymnastics starts now." In the market at the foot of the mountain. The market was very lively at this time. It was not because the morning market had started. The people here were not so diligent. After all, there was no business at this time. It took at least 2 hours to come to Shao Mountain from Chang'an City. Who would come here to buy things so early? The crowd only heard that Zhang Feng was going to bring the officials of the Ministry of Works and Rights to visit the academy, as well as the famous Imperial College and Hongwen Guan academies in Chang'an City. They were all going to visit White Deer College. Everyone was happy. After all, this was Zhang Feng's academy. It was a place that could compete with the Imperial College. Most of the people here had made a fortune by relying on Zhang Feng. At this time, they also thought that they were part of the academy. To them, this was something worth bragging about for the rest of their lives. If it weren't for the White Deer Institute's benevolence, most of the people here would have already starved to death. When they needed people on the mountain, they would come here to work and survive. After they were done, Zhang Feng actually gave them a batch of money according to their wishes. He even gave them a piece of land at the foot of the mountain for them to make a living. Moreover, there were no taxes here. One only needed to donate some money to the academy every year. Principal Zhang even said that it depended on the individual situation. 1 copper coin was fine, and he wouldn't mind even if it was 10,000 strings of string of coins. How could there be such a good person in the world? Boom, boom, boom. While everyone was looking forward to it, a series of rumbling sounds came from afar. On the side of the stone carving was the handwriting of the 4 deans of White Deer College. It was called meticulous calligraphy. This was the first time they had seen such characters. However, they had heard from Zhang Feng that these characters were simplified Chinese characters, which were more concise and clear. As for the actions of Qian Wanli and the others, was there even a need to mention it? They were all the products of Zhang Feng's training. Gloriously, it was said that this would help with the management of military-style teaching. In the beginning, everyone was so happy that they wanted to die. This was especially so when Zhang Feng left the academy to participate in the mid-autumn hunt. Almost the entire academy did nothing but focus on training these characters. In the past 7 days, the results were obvious. At the very least, those who objected had shut their mouths. It seemed that even Mr. Xian Ben, who loved to nitpick, was full of praise for this method. At this moment, below the 3 statues of the teaching building, there was a high platform made of cement and bricks. On the high platform, fruits, tea, and other items had already been placed. After Yu Shernan and the others sat down, Ouyang Sun frowned when he saw the basketball racks. He wanted to say something, but in the end, he kept his mouth shut. There was a reason why they had to choose this place out of all the other places. This type of teaching building was unique even in the Tang dynasty. In addition, with such a novel and innovative campus facility, it was also the time to show the strength of White Deer College. At this moment, Cheng Chumo once again urged the horses to go around the entrance of the mountain and the campus to pass on the latest information. When Cheng Chumo finally appeared, behind Yu Shernan and the others, Zhang Feng and the others had already appeared, sitting on poles as they slowly walked over. Seeing this, Yu Shernan waved his hand. Qian Wanli, who could not wait any longer, immediately shouted, "Everyone, look to the right!" Whoosh! A chorus of voices rang out. More than 2,000 students present instantly turned around. The sound of the soles of their feet rubbing against the cement floor instantly exploded into a loud noise. Salute! Pa! At this moment, looking at the students of White Deer College standing upright and thinking of the strange actions of the White Deer College students during the mid-autumn hunt, everyone who came to visit was stunned by the spectacular scene. Chapter 1009. This. Lu Hongwen finally regained his senses after much difficulty. Looking at the movements of more than 2,000 students, including the movements of raising their hands and placing them at the corners of their eyes and eyebrows, and the fact that they were all of similar height, he could not help but feel a little shocked. Thinking about it, as the top institution of learning in the Tang dynasty, how many students did the Imperial College have? Putting aside the fact that these more than 2,000 people were trained for a short period of time, just this feat alone was enough to make people admire them. His Imperial College had less than 200 people in total, and all of them had high standards. Even if he, Lu Hongwen, had to wait for 2 hours to give them a lecture personally. But here, Yu Shernan waved his hand. The person who looked like a student roared. These people all made the same choice at the same time. What the hell? It was simply. Zhang Feng smiled slightly and gestured for the sedan bearers to lower the poles. He returned a military salute to Qian Wanli and shouted loudly, "Students, you've worked hard. Teacher, you've worked hard. You've served the people." Zhang Feng was very satisfied. When he left, he was really not sure if this military-style teaching could achieve any results by the time he returned. Therefore, when he returned to the academy, he asked Chen Tinyu to report to the academy first. But who would have thought that it would really look like a real thing? Qian Wanli was so excited that the corners of his mouth were trembling. He was so emotional that tears were flashing in his eyes. He shouted somewhat hoarsely, "All the students and teachers, a total of 2,731 people, are all present. Teacher, Please inspect them. Good. Zhang Feng nodded. Then, he turned around and looked at the shocked faces of the few people. He coughed, smiled, and made a gesture of invitation. He said, Lord Qian, Lord He, Lord Sun, Dean Liu, and Dean Ouying, would you do me the honor of giving us a lecture? It was only at this point that the 5 people reacted. Lecture? Wasn't this F*King nonsense? Was there a need for a lecture? This brat was clearly putting on a show for them. Ahem, President Zhang, you are really good at educating people. Lord He laughed and said again, these 2,000 people must have been trained since the opening of the mountain gate, right? I didn't expect that President Zhang not only created such a miraculous dish like braised meat with white paper, but also managed the academy so well. No, Lord He, you're wrong. Zhang Feng sighed and said, actually, I only taught a few disciples when I had nothing to do. This kid is called Qian Wanli. He used to be very mischievous, and I have a bad temper. After 3 days of teaching, I didn't expect him to teach the whole school during the few days I went to participate in the mid-autumn hunt. Puff! Hearing this, Lord He almost spat out a mouthful of blood. In the next few days? More than 2,000 people? Damn you, do you think you're a god? It was less than 10 days. Even if you didn't eat or sleep, you couldn't have reached such a level, right? Lord He smiled reluctantly. His hand behind his back turned to the people behind him for help for a moment, but no one came forward to answer him. He had to pretend to be stupid and laughed. President Zhang is really good at running the academy. We really need to learn from you. Seeing that things were almost done, Zhang Feng made a gesture of invitation and said, very good, we can start the morning exercises. Yes. Hearing this, Qian Wanli turned around again and shouted, the 8th set of radio gymnastics officially begins. Stretching, 1, 2, 3, 4. 2, 2, 3, 4. At this time, Ouying Kai and the others' eyes were fixed. Looking at the spectacular thing that they had never seen before, they hurriedly asked, President Zhang, this is the 8th set of radio gymnastics. You know my philosophy of running the school. This thing is actually a kind of magic that evolved from the 5 animal frolics to strengthen the body. Without waiting for them to take their seats, Lu Hongwen, who reacted, pulled Zhang Feng and said, Brother Zhang, President Zhang, can I have a word with you? At this time, they had already walked in front of Yu Shernan. It was not good for them to say anything. They hurriedly greeted Yu Shernan and the others, and then sat down on both sides with heavy hearts. At this time, Zhang Feng was very comfortable. He winked at Yu Shernan and the others, and they couldn't help laughing heartily. Then Yu Shernan pointed to the audience and said, It's the first time you've come to the academy. Later, old man will prepare a public class. Please give me some advice. Hearing this, the corners of their mouths twitched. Ouyang Kai and the others could only pretend that they didn't hear it. The more they watched the morning exercises, the more excited they became. It was as if what they were watching was not morning exercises, but the magnificent feat of the Imperial College in front of the Emperor. It was as if they would be promoted in the next moment. After the 3 sets of radio gymnastics, Qian Wanli saluted again and said, Reporting to the Dean, the 8th set of radio gymnastics has finished. Please give me instructions. Start the running exercise. Zhang Feng waved his hand lightly. Everyone, look forward, at ease, attention. Chapter 10:10. The anxiety of these people. Zhang Feng, Yu Shernan, and the others all saw it. How could they not know that these people would be shocked? Even at this moment, when they saw it again, they were still shocked beyond words. After all, this thing was made by them. At the same time, Yu Shernan was well aware of what would happen if word of this got out. He did not need to think to know the content of the conversation between the people from the Imperial College and Zhang Feng. These people were definitely asking Zhang Feng for the method, but Zhang Feng did not agree. It seemed like this kid was up to no good. But it made sense. These guys had previously caused so much trouble for White Deer College. If not for Zhang Feng's resourcefulness, the college might not even be able to continue operating. After a while, Qian Wanli, Cheng Chumo, and the others who had just returned to the college and changed into their uniforms slowly led the group of students out of the campus. Their orderly footsteps sounded like the galloping of thousands of soldiers and horses. It was a spectacular sight. At this moment, as the students slowly walked away, Lu Hongwen and the others could not help but stand up. They watched as these people left, still unable to react. Seeing this, Zhang Feng exchanged glances with Yu Shernan and the others again. They took the bait. Everyone, it's time for dinner. Old man has prepared some wine. Please come with us. Yu Shernan said with a smile. When everyone heard this, who would dare to disobey? They hurriedly thanked him and followed Yu Shernan and the others. They hung around with mixed feelings. Zhang Feng also took the opportunity to introduce the construction of the college, the technology building, the activity room, and so on. In any case, he described everything as awesome, especially the basketball. In the end, Zhang Feng and Lord Qian from the Ministry of Works laughed and hugged each other, calling each other brothers. No one knew what they were talking about. Although Ouyang Sun did not like it and felt that it was a disgrace to the educated. Although that was what he said, when he saw Zhang Feng and that person's behavior, he could faintly feel that there was something fishy going on. Yu Shernan secretly patted Ouyang Sun's shoulder and signaled him to ignore it. Ouyang Sun shook his head and walked towards the cafeteria. The most important place in the White Deer Academy, other than the confidential information room and the teacher's office, would be the canteen. Just as Zhang Feng had said, food was the most important thing in the White Deer Academy. If one couldn't even enjoy their meals in a carefree environment, how would they be able to enjoy their meals? The cafeteria was on the first floor of the dormitory building. Although the dormitory building was not ready, the cafeteria on the first floor was ready first. After all, they had eaten outdoor meals for more than a month. Chapter 10-12. After Zhang Feng sent these people away with great difficulty, he thought it over and decided that it would be best to send Zhang Yuyao and Jing Shu back to the residence. After all, Biyuan was located in one of the 16 royal cities. It was also the safest place at the moment. From the looks of it, this matter wasn't as simple as Zhang Feng had thought. If he completely fell out with the 5 surnames and 7 Wang, the Guanlong 8 great families, and the Shandong clan, the consequences would be unthinkable. Moreover, this matter had already involved 2 families. The Shandong landowning household had yet to appear, so no one knew if the Shandong landowning household was involved. Therefore, Zhang Feng felt a bit guilty. It wasn't that Zhang Feng was afraid, but that once this matter began, there would be no turning back. At that time, there would only be 2 paths to choose between life and death. There wouldn't be a third possibility. Zhang Feng smoked one cigarette after another. The small wooden hut was quickly enveloped in a thick, gloomy atmosphere. After an unknown amount of time, Zhang Sun rushed in with Li Shimin and Lu Ruochen. They hurriedly rode their white horses and killed their way to the main entrance of White Deer College. Li Shimin's expression was very ugly. He urged his horse to look around the mountain entrance and coldly asked the guard at the entrance, "Where is Zhang Feng?" The guard had never seen the emperor reveal such an imperious aura outside the palace. After all, this was the first time he had seen it on this desolate mountain. His heart trembled as he hastily pointed in the direction of Zhang Feng's small wooden hut. Li Shimin urged his horse on and didn't care about anything else as he charged straight for the door of the small wooden hut. The galloping white horse was rather docile. Just as it was about to crash into the small wooden hut, Li Shimin pulled on the reins. The white horse raised its head to the sky and neighed. Then it snorted and spun around on the ground. Only then did Li Shimin jump off the horse's back. Although this white horse was selected from tens of thousands of horses after a strict screening by the people in the palace, according to the appearance of the white horse that Li Shimin had beheaded at the bank of the Wei River, although it was still not as brave as Li Shimin's white horse, it was good that this horse was docile. Just like Li Shimin at this moment, Li Shimin was very fond of her. Even though Li Shimin was already standing at the door of Zhang Feng's cabin, the white horse still rubbed against Li Shimin's sleeve, as if asking if he should wait here. Li Shimin stroked the white horse's mane, then looked at Cheng Chumo and said, "No one is allowed to enter the cabin within 10 steps of it." After giving the order, Li Shimin took a deep breath and entered the cabin. As soon as he entered the cabin, Li Shimin frowned slightly.